Meeting is being recorded.
Rebecca, did you want to say anything before I get started?
No, I already did the roll call. Everybody is present.
Okay. We'll just keep this part real casual then, and I can just start the training if you'd like. Okay. So the purpose of this 6 p.m. workshop is to provide some training. We have a number of, or many of you are new to the Planning Commission, and we want to make sure that we're providing you with the sort of tools and information that you need to be successful. Basically what I've done is I've just taken slides from presentations that I give when I'm sometimes an invited speaker at planning short course is what it's called. It's a course that's offered periodically through the Department of Commerce and sometimes hosted by local municipalities or different areas. And there's usually a number of speakers, and sometimes I come on in and I do one like training module. And I only speak for about 25 minutes, but I thought today we can just take it a little slower. I can just convey the information to you that I usually provide to a larger audience, but kind of customize it along the way for Benton City. And then we'll have chance to answer questions on the material as well, if that sounds okay with everybody. First, do you all want to introduce yourselves to each other? You can each take a turn to introduce yourselves, since many of you haven't spoken to each other before.
I'm Michelle McLeod, and I'd like to welcome you to the Planning Commission. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, I'll go next. My name's Janet Lowry. I live on Babs. I'm the one with the antennas that you can see from the street. So now you all know where I live. I'm very happy to be here.
Hi, my name's Jeannie Wallace, and I welcome all the newbies, and I hope you enjoy your participation in this. And since the last gentleman told us where he lives, I live across the street from the library downhill in the old big white farmhouse.
Oh, my apologies. I live on Fig Street, and it's off of Jane and 11th, right above where the development we're going to talk about is at.
Ooh, okay.
Hi, this is Sarah Funk. I am really looking forward for the opportunity to serve on Planning Commission with you all. I know there's been a lot of growth, and Planning Commission's been hard at work, and really looking forward just to participating and contributing. I live on Angeline behind the Catholic Church, and the development that'll come up later tonight is also nearby me. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you so much.
I'm Levi Kearns, new councilman or commissioner, I guess, and looking forward to learning what the Planning Commission does and trying to help out. I live on 7th Street, adjacent to the walking path. I have a pasture up walking path on 7th. So.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Ozuna. I'm the city clerk / treasurer for the city of Benton City, also the clerk of the board for the Planning Commission. So I'm normally at these meetings. However, when I am not able to attend, Mrs. Dukes covers for me. So, but this is my second Planning Commission meeting since I started. So it's a pleasure to meet you all.
And I'm Margaret Dukes, and I work for the city of Benton City and I do most of the transcription of the minutes, and that's my major job, and I do other things for the city as well.
I'm Millieanne Van Devender. I work with Nicole at AHBL, and even though we're employed by AHBL, we work for Benton City. We are essentially your planning staff.
Great, thank you, everyone. I think that was everybody. So I'll continue now, and I will be providing some slides. So just give me a moment here. I'll get my presentation started and share it with you. And now can someone confirm that you can see one big slide on the screen? Excellent,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned before, my name is Nicole Stickney. I'm the planning project manager here at the Tri-Cities office. Millie Ann and I both reside in Benton County, so we are well familiar with the area. And as I said, this is a presentation I typically will give to different communities across the state. Usually in person is how we like to do it, but recently we've gone online with these. But this is something I would encourage you to do sometime, is take a planning short course if you get a chance. But this will give you just a little bit of a description of the information that's provided in those trainings. So first, I just wanted to begin with an announcement about the Open Public Meetings Act. This is training that's required by law. When you become an official of the city, which includes city council members, planning commission members, you need to complete training on the Open Public Meetings Act, or OPMA, within 90 days of beginning those duties. So for those of you who are just appointed to the planning commission, you have a little bit of time to get that done. And if you've been on the commission for a while, if it's been more than 4 years since you had training, it's time to get that done again. Good news, you don't have to go to an in-person class. You can do this remotely. There's some internet-based training available. And I believe that Rebecca has already passed this along to you, but just to give you a quick outline of some different options, and maybe you'll be so interested in this topic you'll want to do all of them, but you certainly don't need to. The first option is on YouTube. You can do a Washington State Department of Commerce video. The second option, you can do a video that's by the Association of Washington Cities and MRSC. That one is more geared towards city council members and mayors, but certainly good information for planning commissioners alike. And then what I would recommend is that you, if you get a chance to, you go online, or when we can do these presentations live again, you go to a training. This is a picture of one that we did. That's me speaking to the audience. City of Richland hosted us about 2 years ago, right when COVID was starting. And you can receive training on the OPMA plus a whole host of other topics. And like I said, those are offered periodically, and there are some courses coming up that will be online, so you can take full advantage of all of those opportunities. Once you do your training, you might be able to print off a certificate depending on where you get that training from, and you can self-certify that you've done the training. That's always nice to do, or you can send an email to Rebecca, and as the clerk, she'll keep records on that. So you can say that you have fulfilled that requirement. So any questions on that before I move on to just the actual agenda of what I'm going to be presenting tonight? Any questions on the Open Public Meeting Act?
This is Jeannie Wallace, and I had a question whether these trainings covered your basic parliamentary procedures, Robert's Rules of Order.
No, I don't know enough about Robert's rules. I know some, but not enough to do a training on it. But there might be online research.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant the online training. Does that?
No.
Just no.
They don't go over parliamentary procedures either. So, but that doesn't mean that there isn't information out there. I can provide a link to a website called Jurassic Parliament. This is put together by a woman in the state. I don't know where she hails
Eastern
from.
part of the state.
The eastern part. Okay.
Yeah, she's in the eastern part of the state. The training from AWC kind of touches on it.
Okay.
But it's not like in depth on it. But if you're wanting some training, AWC, the training for AWC of the OPMA and Public Records Act kind of touches on it. But like I said, it's not very in depth on it.
Great. Okay. So, and Benton City is a member of the Association of Washington Cities. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So AWC is the Association of Washington Cities, and you can potentially do some training through them. Or if you look online, you might even be able to find like tip sheets or things like that that kind of help you remember the most important things, like there's a motion on the table, what's the next step, that sort of thing.
Right. Thank you so much.
Okay, so just to go over quickly, just the high points here of what I'll be talking about here in the next few minutes with you. I'm going to talk about land use processes, give you the policy information that really is the foundation for a lot of what we do here at the Planning Commission, and give you a quick overview of different decision types. Then I will quickly outline the different roles and best practices among these different entities, City Council, Planning Commission, and planning staff. And then I'll conclude with some tips for being effective in your public hearings and your meetings. It's really important to understand the appearance of fairness doctrine. That is a principle in the state of Washington, and it requires that any quasi-judicial public hearings meet two requirements. First, they must be procedurally fair. And second, they must appear to be conducted by an impartial group of decision makers or decision maker. Now, this is interesting because it's called the appearance of fairness doctrine. So it's not even saying that we have to be fair. We also have to appear fair. And what that means is we have to go kind of the extra mile to disclose anything that might be considered to cause an impartial stance on something. And I'll go a little bit more into that. Also, just to quickly explain, a quasi-judicial public hearing are those things where you're making sort of a judgment or acting in the kind of way that a judge would act on a permit. So things that aren't quasi-judicial include things like adopting a comprehensive plan or updating the code for the city, whereas the things that are quasi-judicial and where the appearance of fairness doctrine does apply are things like a site-specific rezone, a variance application, a preliminary plat application, and a conditional use permit. So for all of those, they have to be procedurally fair. They have to appear to be conducted by impartial decision makers.
I have a question about that,
Sure.
if I may.
Mhm.
This is Janet over here. Who's the arbiter of what is fair?
So we'll go over kind of disclosures and how that would work. I don't really have a direct answer for you on that question. Again, it's the appearance of fairness doctrine. So people can appeal a decision based on a failure to be procedurally fair or to appear to be conducted by an impartial decision maker. That can be a reason for an appeal. So
Okay, all right.
Yep, someone could say, I've been aggrieved by the recommendation or the decision of the city council, and I'm gonna now appeal the decision in light of failure to apply the appearance of fairness doctrine, and then it would be up to the court. So I guess I kind of have answered your question. It kind of just depends on
No, you
appeal.
answered the question.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay.
Good. Thanks, Janet. So what do you need to know? If a decision maker's participation in a quasi-judicial decision violates this appearance of fairness doctrine, and that participation is challenged, a court can invalidate that decision, and a whole new hearing and decision will need to be made without the decision maker that's been disqualified. So basically, if a city council passes something and then someone says, whoa, wait, this wasn't fair, they could take it to court, and the court could actually remand that decision back to the city council and say, you got to start the whole process over again, and you got to do it right this time. So all of us want to see things go as smoothly and as correctly as possible. So we do take those steps to avoid those types of failures. So what do you need to do as a person on the Planning Commission? First, you need to avoid and disclose ex parte communications, and also disclose conflicts and take any necessary action. So an ex parte communication, and I think that's one way to pronounce it. I don't think that's the only way to pronounce it, but I always call it ex parte. It's a legal term, and it has to do with only one side of a story. So an example of an ex parte communication might be you're on a planning commission and your neighbor comes next door to you and says, hey, I know that there's this rezone that's being considered, and either asks you about it or provides opinion about it. That would be one example. Another example of an ex parte communication would be if you're, say, in a homeowners association and you receive an email and everybody in the HOA gets the same email, but it talks about a pending land use decision that's quasi judicial. That's going to be an ex parte communication. Or it could be even something that you initiate. Like if you go and you talk to you know, your friend that's a real estate agent, then you find out that they're involved with something and you've had this conversation about maybe some particulars about a project. All of those would be considered ex parte communications because they did not occur within the context of the hearing. And so what you need to do is before the hearing begins, and you will be given an opportunity with our hearings that are quasi judicial in nature to come up with any disclosures. So what you do is you say, hey, I have to disclose, I had a conversation, and you might just explain what the nature of that conversation was or what information you read or received, and you put it out there. You know, we don't hide those things. We just say, this is what occurred. And I you know, maybe didn't have the opportunity to avoid this conversation. Certainly that's always the first thing you should do is try to avoid it from the get-go, but, you know, disclose it if it has occurred. And that's in the RCWs there. And then you should also, because of all of this, disclose conflicts and take any necessary action. So there will be a question that you'll hear, because we've put a script together for these hearings where it'll say, you know, can you be impartial? Are you going to be in a position to make a fair decision on something? And if you have a particular interest in terms of money, like you could stand to really benefit or gain, say if a rezone is approved, you need to disclose that conflict. Many times this would include being recused from a hearing. So that's why we do all these declarations at the beginning. If someone is unable to be impartial, they should either recuse themselves or the applicant can request that they be recused from the proceedings. So we just get everything out from the beginning. I will add that there are some times where maybe you've had an ex parte communication, you've disclosed it, but you're still needed for the hearing. This might be a situation where without your participation, we wouldn't have a quorum and we wouldn't be able to have the hearing. So there are some gray areas there, but certainly all of these things should be discussed before we're underway with a hearing, and there will be a chance to disclose those things. All right, just real quick before I move on, are there any questions about the appearance of fairness doctrine? I know I kind of talked in these broad terms, but this might be the first time you've heard about something like this.
Actually, Nicole, this is Jeannie Wallace, and I had one of the citizens approach me because they were interested in getting involved, but they had went to City Hall, but apparently they weren't able to communicate because they weren't using the appropriate name for the meeting tonight. The Vintners, they thought it was like L2 or something I'd never heard of. So I told them, I said, this is the name of what you're looking for. And I said, you can either comment in writing or attend the public meeting. Is that
something? Talking about Legion Heights too?
Well, it's the one, I don't know. That's what they were, I think, were asking about. I've not heard of that. They were interested in the meeting we're having tonight on the Vintners.
Okay.
And so I didn't know what they were talking about. So I just told them the topic, you know, I said, this is the development. So,
so in this case, it sounds like nobody was trying to influence your decision. Nobody was trying to give you comment outside of a hearing that would violate the Open Public Meetings Act, or trying to sway you a certain way that would violate the appearance of fairness doctrine. Rather, you were providing information about, well, where do you go to this, you know, on the city website to get information, or when's the meeting, or how do you provide comment? I think all of that's absolutely fine. I don't see any, you know, issue with that. So you really want to kind of think like, what's the impact of the discussion I had? What was the nature of the discussion I had? And if it's just like, hey, is there a meeting tonight and how do I get involved? Of course, that has really no bearing on your decision about the development itself. So
Okay,
Yeah.
so in that case, I wouldn't need to make that clarification
No,
statement.
no, unless
Okay, just
someone
wanna be
was,
sure.
so someone was trying to, talk to you about it, like say, well, this could be really great for the community or a real problem for the community, if they were not really talking about the content of it all, should be
Right, okay.
just fine. Yep. Good. Thank you for the question. Any others? Okay, I will move along. So now we're going to talk a little bit about this in relation to the land use process, and also hopefully just give you some information about the things that might come across to you folks as Planning Commission members. So I sort of already talked about this in a real basic way, but basically in the land use process, we see three different types of processes. The first is legislative, and that's where we're making laws. These are the policy items. So adopting policies, development regulations, that's sometimes a really drawn out process, or it can be. And this is where the Planning Commission might have a role in making recommendations to the City Council about adoption of a comprehensive plan, changing at the land use map of the comprehensive plan, certainly. Looking at code changes, development regulations such as subdivision code, or, those types of things, those things that kind of lay a foundation for decisions that are made in the city. The way I characterize this is there's lots of public input on legislative items because a lot of times it affects the entire city or the entire shoreline areas within the city, or all areas that are zoned residential, for example. So, it affects a lot of people. We definitely want to get lots of public input. And in fact, we're required to get a lot of public input on these items in accordance with the Growth Management Act of Washington State. Moving down, there's another category here called quasi-judicial, and that is where you're applying laws. So you are reviewing and deciding on project permit applications. That has less public input, but there is still public input in the process. Public input would be attained through going through a hearing and soliciting comments even from a notice of application or SEPA environmental review, review for a project. So, the public is involved, but they're more focused, and you might not put feelers out to the whole city saying, hey, everyone, we're adopting a new comprehensive plan, come be involved with the process. Instead, our outreach would be more targeted. So for example, we might send letters out to folks within 300 feet of a particular site to let them know about a hearing, because it's a quasi-judicial matter. And then lastly, there's administrative activity in the city. And these are your day-to-day activities like issuing building permits, reviewing where a fence is going to be placed, where a manufactured home will be placed, looking at floodplain permit, these types of things. This doesn't go through a planning commission. It doesn't go through the city council. Instead, this is driven by staff work. And this is pretty cut and dry. It's the question of whether a project meets the code. And there is very little or maybe even no public input when this occurs. And this is more of the routine type decisions. Just a little bit more in depth then, for a legislative process, as I mentioned, that's where you're making the law. And I gave some of these examples. The role of the Planning Commission typically is to make a recommendation, and then the legislative body is the one that adopts. And in Benton City, the legislative body is your city council. This process does invite a broad-based public participation component, and it involves public hearings. But as I mentioned before, there's kind of two different types of public hearings. They're different animals, of course, and a legislative public hearing is a lot looser, let's say, than a quasi-judicial public hearing. When we're working through something at the Planning Commission and it's a legislative process, you don't have to disclose any communication, and you don't have to worry about whether you're impartial or partial to certain ideas. This is policy decisions. These are legislative decisions. So, everybody stands to benefit or gain, so to speak, in the city when these types of things come about. So there's no worry about disclosure disclosure. There's also many times no limitation on the number of public hearings we can have. So we don't have to be so kind of uptight and careful as we're going through these things. That can be a lot more free flowing. And you know, anybody can go talk to any city council member or any planning commission member as a constituent and as an interested party on these types of decisions. So let me be clear on this. If anybody wants to talk to you about, you know, a policy decision like a code update or a comprehensive plan change, that's no problem at all. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to be extra careful as you do with these other items. So examples here in Benton City, of course, the code, like I mentioned, the comprehensive plan, and then I haven't mentioned the shoreline master program. That is another policy document. So that also adoption of an SMP or update to an SMP, that also falls under this legislative umbrella. Okay, moving along now, quasi-judicial process. This is where applying the law and the rules. This is where we are applying those policy or development regulations to a specific permit. So for example, if we're looking at a rezone, we want to know what's the criteria in the code for a rezone and what are those standards of law that we can apply to a proposed rezone application. We will try to always remember to ask the question, does this permit application comply with the law? There can be conditions applied to certain situations for issues that are not covered by law. So for example, you might be considering a conditional use permit, and that'll kind of cue you in right there. It's got the word conditional in it. But with a conditional use permit, there is an opportunity to say, hey, this particular use and the way it's going to be configured, it's going to have these unique impacts. The code can't cover every possible scenario for development out there. So we're going to figure out what types of conditions might be appropriate for that project to cover the impacts that it's imposing. Now, as I mentioned before, public hearing notices for these types of decisions are broad-based, but they're also site-specific. So we send out notices in the mail many times to people I mentioned within 300 feet, say, of a site. That doesn't mean that only those people can comment. So the public hearing is broad-based. You know, it's also put in the newspaper, put on the website, so anybody can come out. But of course, we want to make sure that those who are most likely to be affected get the notice as well. So that's why they get the mailings. So some examples of these quasi-judicial processes, maybe a master plan adoption, a subdivision, site-specific rezone, certainly conditional use permit. You might have a conditional use permit, for example, for a cell tower, for a church building, you know, different things like that. If we could think of everything kind of in a hierarchical organization, you would move from legislative down to quasi-judicial down to administrative, thinking that the items at the top are more general, and you're typically going to have greater public input for those. And then as you move down, you get less general and more detailed items, and there's limited public or maybe even no public input as you move down. The other way to think about it in terms of hierarchy is the longer term items are at the top, they're legislative, and a shorter term item would be like, you know, turning around a building permit. Of course, the building's going to be there for a long time, but it's a shorter term in terms of the review process. The comprehensive plan for Benton City is meant to be a 20-year vision for the city. Development regulations aren't meant to be changed, you know, 1 month and then changed back the next. They're supposed to be kind of more of this long range planning. And then this particular slide I've put in here, this is particular to Benton City. So this isn't a slide I normally show, but here in Benton City, we recently were able to help update Benton City Municipal Code Chapter 2.70, and that's the administrative processing of different permits for the city. We actually were able to organize items into different application types. Type 1 application is something like a building permit. Type 2 application is something like a final plat. Type 3 decisions, those are the quasi-judicial decisions, so something like a conditional use permit, a rezone. You'll see for those, you have a hearing on those. You do not have any hearings for type 1 or type 2 decisions because they're ministerial or administrative in nature. Type 3 decisions, those go first to the Planning Commission in an open record hearing, and then the final decision on them goes to the City Council via a closed record hearing. Now, item 4 at the bottom, those are the legislative items. So that's when you're going to see the comprehensive plan update or changing Title 20, the zoning code. And that's where it could go to either the Planning Commission or the Planning Commission and City Council, and everything's open record at that point. We don't call any of that closed record because it is legislative in nature. So this kind of organizes out and maybe gives you a direct application of how it works in Benton City. Okay, so this just repeats it now, a little more detail. Again, type 1 is those administrative things. So a boundary line adjustment, for example, does not go to Planning Commission, does not go to City Council. It's done in-house, done it's staff work. Same thing with the shoreline letter of exemption. Type 1A is kind of a special thing, like a final plat or a bonding agreement. That's just how we've organized it. Type 2 are administrative. So we still do a notice on these, but again, they're not reviewed by the Planning Commission, by the City Council. It's done by staff. So those are things like short plats, a SEPA threshold decision, binding site plan. And just, you know, binding site plan is a alternative option for subdividing land for commercial, industrial, or mobile home usage. Residential use permits are another example, and home occupation. So we make notice on these, but they never get to an actual hearing. And then this is just a little more detail to break it out again. Here we're actually providing information about whether there's a notice of application, who's the decision body, do we send out a notice of decision after something's been processed. For example, in the case of a short plat, which is type 2, yes, we send out a notice of decision, but we don't send out notice of decisions for, you know, every building permit that we issue. It just isn't something we do. And then appeal processes are different for each of these types too. So that's why it's kind of nice to streamline things into these groups so it doesn't get so confusing. All of this information is available in Benton City Municipal Code Chapter 2.70. And I think you'll hopefully agree that it's rather easy to understand. Before it was pretty conflated, but now we think we've kind of streamlined things and make them easier to understand.
Nicole, can I have the floor for a second?
Yes, please.
Planning Commission, I just want you to know, a lot of the notices will come out with my name on them, but just know that they actually come from AHBL. So if somebody does approach you and say, well, I received a letter from Rebecca, I sign them and mail them, but the decisions and the extensive work behind the research and everything does come from AHBL. So if people do tend to call me regarding letters, I do refer them to AHBL.
And then, oops, just to kind of finish off this slide here, type 3, I mentioned a bunch of those different examples already, are quasi-judicial. Type 4 is legislative. So again, we have it well organized for you, and we try to put this information in your staff reports. We'll say, you know, at the beginning of it, what type of process we're using, what type of permit it is, so that you get alerted to that right away. You get something in your mail or you get something in email and you see, you know, this is quasi-judicial, you know that, okay, my lips are zipped as much as I can avoid this ex parte communication so that I won't have any issues going forward. All right. Now, just a little bit more, taking a step back a minute from the land use process, I just want to highlight that there are many different people that have different roles and different interests in these processes. So of course, participants would include the public, staff, and you don't have a planner on staff at Benton City, so we are an extension of your staff. So we're kind of in that staff role and also in a consultant role, if you will. Elected officials, so your city council members, planning commissioners, of course, Some municipalities use a hearing examiner, and they would hear those quasi-judicial items or certain quasi-judicial items in lieu of a planning commission. Certainly developers, landowners, all those folks, and then you can refer yourselves the list of other participants. These are other stakeholders in the process. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it just is meant to like kind of get you thinking about you know, who's involved and who has a say in these things. Just to quickly share a quote from the Growth Management Act. Each county and city that is required or chooses to plan shall establish and broadly disseminate to the public a public participation program, identifying procedures for providing early and continuous public participation in the development and amendment of comprehensive plans. This is kind of at the backbone of a lot of what we do. So it needs to be predictable, right? People need to know like, when's a hearing going to be held? When do I get to comment? You know, what's the deadline for writing a letter, all of these types of things. So we try to be as transparent as we can. And before we do big projects, we might even adopt a special public participation program for a particular undertaking. A recent example being the SMP update process. We helped walk the city through that, but at the very beginning, council adopted, if I recall correctly, a public participation plan that was specific to Benton City that said, okay, here we're going to tell you right now how many you know, meetings are we going to have? Are we going to do an open house? How are we going to tell people along the shoreline? Spelled it all out from the beginning so that anyone who wanted to be involved could know what kind of the game plan was. Okay, and then I'll wrap this up here and hopefully we'll have some time for questions before we roll into the 7 o'clock hour with our hearing, but I just want to go over rules and best practices. Now, these are some generic slides, but of course they will apply to Benton City. I'll try to make some notes in cases where there might be some exceptions. So of course, city council members, those are the policymakers. They represent and are directly accountable to the governed. So they are there to represent the constituents. This says they appoint residents to the planning commission. In the case of Benton City, that's actually a role of the mayor. And then they can provide a policy direction regarding a work program to that planning commission to let them achieve it. I don't know that the planning commission of Benton City, if you've typically worked with a work program before, but certainly, you know, if you've got a big project coming up, like a periodic review of a comprehensive plan, you know, there's typically a work program for that. We know about how many meetings we want to have, what level of detail we want to get to. The policymakers or city council members are also responsible for taking final action on legislative matters. So that is something like the adoption and amendment of a comp plan, development regs, their capital budgets is another example. And they will take final action on quasi-judicial matters if the code assigns that to the legislative body. So again, that's one of those things where it can be different from one community to the next. You might hear about an action, or you might read in the newspaper about an action over at the city of Richland, and you're going, oh, they do things differently over there. Yeah, that happens a lot. And that's something that's always challenging to folks like me and Millieanne. We can get stumped pretty quickly. So we always have to kind of look back at your code and say, okay, how are you doing it here? And make sure that we're in alignment, because we might be helping many different municipalities out. And everybody's got a little bit different process. So we have to always kind of make sure that we're checking back in to roll these things out correctly. My recommendations to city council members, I would hope that they would respect and support your role on the planning commission. I would hope that they would carefully review the recommendations from you guys and take the time to understand the record and the rationales behind certain recommendations. We tell city council members, you know, agree with the planning commission when you can, but disagree when you must. If you do disagree with the commission, take the time to explain why. It might just be a quick comment before taking a vote, something, but to say, well, we got this recommendation from the planning commission and we're going to go another direction, and this is the reason behind it. Periodically, it's good to provide two-way feedback. There's always an option to meet jointly on occasion. That isn't often done in a lot of communities, but that can be an option. And then The City Council, of course, is there to provide direction, scope, and resources for what the Planning Commission is accomplishing. Planning Commission, you folks are the policy advisors. You are the first and primary body responsible for hearing the public input on land use matters. So we talk a lot about your role is to help create the record for the decision-making body to review. It's great to note that Planning Commission members bring in important expertise to the consideration of plans and implementation. You are a cross-section of the community. You reflect the perspective, experience, and values of the community that you represent. And of course, one of your important roles is to listen to the staff recommendation and public input, weigh the evidence, pay attention to what criteria applies per the code, and then make a thoughtful and well-considered recommendation to City Council. So hopefully you would respect and support City Council's roles, their prerogatives. They are elected into their positions. We hope that you do your homework and read the packet before the meetings. And we'll try to always give you enough time to do that, realizing that sometimes we can't get things out as quickly as we'd like to because we might be waiting for comments or still formulating the staff report, doing our work. Please give careful consideration and weight to all the public testimony, facts, and criteria that are applicable. Please have an open mind and treat everyone with respect and strive to persuade rather than argue. Planning Commission meetings, City Council meetings seldom go well when we start just having a debate over things. So you can say your piece and then let the next person say theirs, and we don't need to go back and forth. Typically at a hearing, I would recommend that you address applicants, citizens, and staff by a surname or a title. This may not be something you really want to do in Benton City. It's a smaller community, but certainly in larger cities, I will often recommend this because if someone's like, hey, Nicole, or hey, Jerry, or hey, Susan, it might sound like, you're really buddies, and maybe that makes you look less impartial. It might be better to say Ms. Stickney or Mr. Jones and be a little more formal when you're sitting at the dais or on a Zoom call, just so that people aren't going, what's going on here? Next, give appropriate deference to technical judgment within staff's area of expertise. When we see a traffic study, that's signed off by an engineer, you might call into question some of the conclusions, but for the most part, hopefully you'll be able to trust their judgment and accept it as it's provided. And then gracefully accept the City Council may not always agree with your recommendations. Next, we encourage you to elect a knowledgeable and fair chairperson, someone who can keep a meeting moving along, of course, is important. Familiarize yourself with any bylaws or rules of procedures that may have been adopted. I'm not familiar with any for Benton City in particular, but certainly familiarize yourselves with the codes is important. Learn about land use law and topics under discussion. And when you are deliberating on a decision, focus on that decision criteria. So a lot of times it's easy to get kind of led astray with other topics or things that maybe aren't relevant. I don't know, I could give some silly examples. Maybe people get to where they start talking about, oh, the trees drop the fruit at this person's house, and then the fruit becomes a problem, and there's the squirrels everywhere, and it's, well, that has nothing to do with whether they should be able to rezone their property, let's say. So try to focus on those types of criteria that really are particular to a decision instead of those ancillary things that might be important but aren't important to the particular matter at hand. Now, in terms of for planning staff, what's our obligation to you? We are here to present thorough and objective analysis, look at alternatives, and provide professional recommendations based on good facts and best practices. So we do our job best when we give you some kind of a thorough outlook of things. Carry forward and explain your recommendation to the City Council, even if we don't agree with it, perhaps. Respect and support your policy advising role, and respect the City Council's policymaking prerogatives, and provide responsive, complete, and timely answers to questions. So that's our best practices. Now I'm just going to roll into public hearings and meetings. These are just some slides just to kind of set the tone here. For public meetings, the chairperson should be kind of a gatekeeper. You're there to announce the agenda, manage the flow, enforce time limits, and maintain decorum. You're running the show. We're just here as staff to support you. As part of opening remarks, the chair should state that all public input will be given consideration, but it's the commission's job to weigh all the information before reaching conclusions. And the chair's role is also to ensure that all commissioners have an equal opportunity to ask questions and express their opinions. After the chair declares the public hearing open, the staff presents the report, and then following that, the applicant gets to talk, and then public input should be taken. So we kind of do things in a procedural order. Time limits might need to be placed on the length of public comment many times, and that's at the discretion of the chair. So they might say, I see we have 12 people signed up to speak tonight. We're going to impose a 3-minute time limit. Something like that might be appropriate. Planning Commission members can ask questions of either staff or those that are providing testimony, but this should be the purposes of clarification, not for debate or argument. After all the information's been entered in the record, then the chair should call for a motion to close the public hearing. So you don't want to close it off before everything's been put out there. And using a script can be helpful. We did provide a script for tonight. Again, at public hearings, you want to listen. It's seldom a good idea to lecture or argue when you're in this role. At a planning commission meeting, you might want to watch your body language. It's a little different on Zoom, of course, but if you're sitting back uninterested or rolling your eyes, that's gonna not look good for anybody. You should avoid sidebar conversations. So when there's a meeting going on and we see 2 planning commission members kind of like whispering to each other, that's not a good look either. It just makes you look less impartial. Educate yourself, ask questions prior to the hearing, and come prepared. Share your thoughts and try to relate them to the decision criteria. And all of us should try to avoid jargon. And so when I use an acronym, I'll try to remember to explain that. It's always the best practice. So with that, that's my last slide. We can take a break until we start at 7 with the agenda for tonight, or I can answer questions if you have any.
This is Jeannie. Of course, I have a question.
Okay.
One of my questions that I have is we put a lot of emphasis on public involvement. However, I don't see what happens to respond to those comments. So say somebody comes in and they say this development needs to have a fence or something. Do we, as the commissioners, can we condition the approval saying we recommend the approval of this project with a fence? We recommend mitigating with a fence, or are we limited just to approval or denial of the specific plat or whatever, or that's presented to us?
Okay, so to answer your question, I'm going to remind you that in a decision, you're going to have findings of fact, and we always try to prime you for that. You don't have to do all that writing yourself. We're as staff, we're going to try to do good staff work and bring that to you. If you need to modify them at the meeting because there's testimony or information or evidence that's been provided, that's part of what the hearing's meant to do. Any condition of approval should relate right back to a finding of fact or something in the code, right? So just because someone's like, oh, I don't think they should be allowed to have a pink house, it's really important to me that no houses in Benton City are pink, and you make that a rule. Well, what's the basis for that? You've got to come up with something. So relate it back to the criteria and come up with a finding, or relate it back to a code provision to have a condition.
So we can't make general references to the comprehensive plan because I use that as the basis for a lot of my decisions.
Yeah, no, definitely the comprehensive plan is always, a basis for these decisions. But the other thing I would warn you to do is always make sure you can remember, what am I approving here? Is this an actual development? Is this a rezone? Because a lot of times I see decision makers or planning commission try to think ahead, or you get comments like, well, you know, we know who's building in this area and they would want to rezone it. You know what they're going to build. Well, we're actually not even considering that right now. What we're considering is a rezone perhaps. So we need to stay focused on what the item at hand is and not get ahead of other processes that might come back or about later because you know, due process considerations. And also, you know, you might rezone a property. It may sit for 10 or 15 years before anyone develops it. You know, we always get kind of like thinking, okay, they're going to move quick. And sometimes they do, but not always. So we have to think like, what is at hand tonight, you know, that we're considering and not try to conflate that with other decisions that are maybe not even made by the Planning Commission or would be made by the Planning Commission in a different setting. Sarah, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks so much. I had a question that I wanted to ask just to kind of get smarter. So it's about SEPA determinations. So, and I'm new, so I apologize and thank you so much for your expertise. When someone's going through the SEPA process, I know there's a lot of steps from like preliminary plat tonight through to actually getting to do all the things that they want to do. So there's different steps along the way. But if their SEPA application changes, for example, you start off thinking you're going to have X number of units, and then it actually is Y number of units, or they're going to be single story, and then they change to something else. Is this new SEPA determination required?
Yeah, so that depends. It kind of depends on the nature of it. When we do a SEPA determination, it's actually called a threshold decision. And the threshold is, does this rise to the level of needing an environmental impact statement? Or are there certain things that can be applied to this proposal where the environmental impacts can be otherwise conditioned or addressed or studied without having to go through that? So first of all, that's kind of the framework of SEPA. But certainly proposals can change or people modify what they're wanting to do. So many times what you'll see is an issuance of a modified DNS or an amendment to a DNS. So a DNS is a determination of non-significance. That means it doesn't rise to the level of needing an EIS. And what we'll do is we'll put it out for public consumption. And sometimes there's a public comment period and sometimes there isn't. SEPA is very complex, so it kind of depends on the situation, but we would put out a notice that says, okay, here's the new environmental information. And then we would describe, are there any new conditions, or you know, is this just disclosing that maybe something's changed about the project?
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it.
I had a question. Well, actually 3 questions. This is Janet here.
Yeah.
First thing is there anywhere where we know what everybody's qualifications are on what their background is on the commission? Kind of curious about that. That's number 1. And number 2, how do you raise your hand on the Zoom? And number 3, who is Brad? There's somebody named Brad here. Who's Brad? So those are my 3 questions.
Okay. Question number 1 is qualifications of your other members of the Planning Commission. I think sometimes that's provided in a city council packet, so you might just check with the clerk to see what information is out there or see what people want to disclose. We've only got a couple minutes here, so I'm going to move quickly. Your next question is, how do you raise your hand? And so if you look at the bottom, I believe, of your screen, it might be at the top of your screen, but it's the bottom of my screen, you'll see there's a place where it says reactions, and that's a place where you can do that hand raise. So I'm raising my hand now, and now I'm lowering my hand to show that. See how it's doing that. And then we would probably not do this during a Planning Commission meeting, but if you love something, you could add a heart. It's just built into Zoom, right? So, I don't know if I'm able to take that away now. Anyways, there's different, things that you can do. Hopefully I can get rid of that for me. Maybe I'll have to sign off and back on again. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things, but really it's the hand raise function that you might want to use. It'll be up to the chairperson to decide the procedures for that. And Brad is one of the applicants. We're going to be joined by our applicants, their engineer, the city attorney. Hopefully the city engineer, we've invited him once we get underway at 7 o'clock. And with that, I'm going to conclude the training. Everybody can take a quick break, and then at 7 o'clock, turn it over to all of you to do your meeting. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, just to let you know, normally the chairperson would ask for a motion to adjourn. But since we don't have a chairperson at the moment, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the workshop meeting and then pause the recording and then restart it up again at 7.
Second the motion.
Okay. So you're gonna first the motion, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a second from somebody?
Sarah Funk, I'm happy to second it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording for now and then I'll, in 3 minutes, I'll put it back on.
I'm here. I just walking around while I could.
is being recorded.
Okay, again, normally the chairperson would call to order the meeting and do roll, and I would do roll call. However, we don't have a chairperson. So I will call a meeting to order at 7 o'clock for the regular planning commission meeting. I'm gonna do a quick roll call again. Commissioner McLeod,
Here.
Commissioner Funk,
Here.
Commissioner Currens,
Here.
Commissioner Lowry,
Here.
Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
Okay, all present. Next on the agenda, we have a nomination for election of chair and vice chair. At this time, I will take any nominations.
This is Sarah Funk. I'd like to nominate Michelle as the chair.
Second,
Second.
okay, who said second? I got three
Jeannie
answers.
Wallace.
Okay. Anybody else?
What, are you looking for somebody else to?
Anybody
What?
else that want, yeah, any other nominations for chair?
Well, if Michelle really doesn't want to do it, I'll put my name in the hat, but they can make her the designated.
Okay,
I guess I accept the nomination for the chair.
can I have?
I guess then you'd need to vote on it.
Yes, yes, Sarah.
I'm clapping. Sorry, we
Oh.
said we wanted to use it, but I'm clapping. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Sarah. And
Okay,
thank you.
I
so
make
we
a
have a
motion.
first and a second for Michelle, and Michelle has accepted the appointment. I need a motion to appoint Miss Commissioner McLeod as chair.
Commissioner,
Oh.
Commissioner Kearns, I make a motion to elect Michelle McLeod as the chair.
Second,
Second.
okay. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Funk, aye.
I need Lowry and Currens.
Kearns, aye.
Aye. There we go.
Okay,
Had it on the wrong one.
it's okay. So we have Commissioner McLeod as chair. Now I need a nomination for vice chair.
This is Sarah Funk. I nominate Levi Kearns for vice chair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other nominations?
I was going to nominate Janice Wallace.
Except for it's Jeannie. Michelle and
Sorry,
Jeannie.
Sunshine. Jeannie, I know. Sorry. I call
I
her
know.
Sunshine. Apologies.
Okay, do we have a second for Jeannie?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Okay, normally when there's a split, see, I haven't came up on this. Nicole, any suggestions?
No, I don't have any suggestions.
Okay.
How about you just flip a coin?
Okay, okay, first of all, Levi, do you accept the nomination?
Sure, I'll accept that.
Jeannie, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Okay.
Just make it difficult.
Yeah, exactly. All those in favor of Curran's as VC, say aye.
Funk, aye.
Okay. All those in favor of Jeannie, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Kearns, aye.
Burns, you can't vote, you're up for nomination. Okay, so based off of that, we have 2-1. So Jeannie's nomination goes through. All those in favor of Jeannie becoming vice chair?
Funk, aye.
Aye.
McLeod, did you say aye? Okay,
You're on mute, Michelle.
I,
okay, so with that, Jeannie will be vice chair. Are you accept that, Jeannie?
Yes, I do accept.
Okay. So now that we have a chair, which is Ms. McLeod, I'll let her take over the rest of the meeting with item 3 on the regular meeting.
okay. I didn't expect this, you guys, so it might be a little bit awkward here at first. Let's go ahead and open the next part of the meeting.
We're doing the approval of the minutes from the November meeting.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes of November 22nd, 2021. Does anyone have anything to fix in the minutes?
Commissioner McLeod, may I have the floor?
Yes.
There's only 2 people here from the original commission, which was you and Jeannie. So I don't know if Curran's, Lowry, or Funk are able to amend anything. So it would just be you and Jeannie.
Point of order.
Okay.
This is actually something I do know about Robert's Rules of Order. You don't have to have attended a meeting to vote on minutes. So everybody can vote on it if they'd like to. Thanks.
I have something to say about the meetings. There is they're not, the pages aren't numbered. So the page that starts with staff suggestions for the planning committee, if you go down to the 4th bullet and you go down to the 3rd line or the 2nd line, over to the right, it says natural gas. Does that mean natural grass or does that mean natural gas? Grass makes more sense to me. So if you could let me know if we need that amended, that would be good.
Margaret,
Yes.
do you know what she's talking about since you wrote the minutes?
I don't have the minutes in front of me. I'll have to look at it.
Okay, let's go ahead and approve the minutes as they're written then, because that was part of the body. My apologies.
Yeah, and I can't recall myself, Michelle, but I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Great.
Second,
A second.
Okay, the motion to approve the minutes has been approved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Michelle, do you have the verbiage for the public hearing?
I'm looking for it.
Okay.
I didn't expect to be the person doing it.
If not, I can bring it up and put it on the share.
That would be great.
Okay. Give me a moment.
Looking for it.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. So you can see it. Let me know if you can see it, Michelle.
Okay, I can see it. Call to order, roll call. We did the nominations. And we did the approval of the minutes. Okay. Next would be the preliminary plat application. Fourth item on our agenda for this event, preliminary plat application for the oh, it's moving, it's gone away.
I'm zooming it in so you can see it better. That better?
Okay, good. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the preliminary plat application. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is my cue. Tonight's meeting will be conducted through an online virtual meeting platform. Planning Commissioner staffs and interested persons are joining us remotely in order to comply with Governor Inslee's Proclamation 20.28.14 as it relates to the Open Public Meetings Act during the COVID state of emergency. Will the clerk read it later? I will read out loud the instructions for the virtual meeting format. Please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the chair to use. You can change this by right-clicking on the three dots of the upper corner of your video view and clicking rename. If you have an unstable internet connection, please also connect through the phone. That will allow you to continue to participate even if you lose internet connection. If you call in after you have joined on the video, click the arrow between you and the video, and there is a button for switch to phone audio. Clicking this button provides a participant ID. Please call in with that ID, as then your phone is associated with your video. We will mute everyone until a designated comment period. When the chair asks for public comment, if you raise your virtual hand, he or she will call on you and you will be unmuted. To virtually raise your hand, click on participants and then click on raise hand. If you are participating by phone only, press *9 to raise your hand. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. So.
We're right here.
Let's see. Well, it went away. Sorry, everyone. The public hearing from the Vertner's Vista preliminary plat application is now open. Statements at this time.
What time is it? You have to state the time of the public hearing.
I'm looking for the time. Let's see. The time is 7:13. Rules of order. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle McLeod. The public hearing will proceed in orderly fashion, and I would like to ask your cooperation in the following procedures. Everyone will be given the opportunity to hear, whoops, it's going away, any individual make comments shall be given this and his or her name shall be the name, and consider the providing the address where you live. Please speak loudly and clearly. This is required because the official records transcripts of the hearing is being made. If there is an appeal, and the court must make a discussion and base of which was said here. Sorry about this. If anyone requires a special accommodation in order to speak, please let us know and we will make arrangements. In fairness to all in attendance, each person will be given the opportunity to address the Planning Commission and an initial period not to exceed 3 minutes. First, the application will be given 5 minutes to make their individual presentation. If more time is needed, it will be made available after everyone has had an opportunity to speak. I am requesting commissioners to hold their questions to the public until everyone is done. It is not necessary to be proponent and opponent in order to speak. There should be no demonstrations such as clapping or cheering during at any conclusion of any presentation. This is the time for presentation in a testimony. No debates are allowed. These rules are intended to promote the orderly style of holding the public hearing, to give every person an opportunity to be heard and ensure opportunities are of free speech. I will review the appearance of fairness and conflict of interest statements, appearance of fairness and conflicts of interest issues. Number one, this hearing is quasi-judicial in nature, and therefore the appearance of fairness and conflict of interest rules apply. Quasi-judicial actions are defined in actions which determine legal rights, duties, and privileges of special parties in a hearing. The public hearing must be fair in 3 respects: from substance and appearance. To all Planning Commission members should now give consideration as to whether they have, 1, a demonstrate bias or prejudice for or against the party of the proceedings; 2, a direct or indirect mentary interest in the outcome of the proceedings; 2, prejudicement of the issues prior to hearing the facts or a record; or 4, ex parte practice which any individual, excluding administrative staff, with regards to the issues prior to the hearing. I will call on each Planning Commission member and applicable order, since we are meeting virtually. Does any member of the appearance of fairness or conflict and interest issues or disclosure to make? Okay.
This is Commissioner Kearns. I don't have any disclosures to make.
Commissioner Funk?
This is Commissioner Funk. And while the first 3 criteria, I don't meet any of those. I live at 901 Angeline Boulevard on the south side of the property and did receive notice, like many others, because of the proximity of this hearing. And a neighbor contacted me and expressed concern, and I just explained to them the path for expressing their concern if they'd like their voice to be heard by adhering to the information that was outlined in the letter. in terms of, participating in this session tonight or writing a letter back to the city so that if they had concerns, then they could get them in the record. I don't believe that that impairs, my bias or prejudice against this proceeding, but I do want to disclose it. Thank you.
Commissioner Lowry?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Lowry. I have no prejudgment of the issue or any ex parte contact with any individual, excluding administrative staff, et cetera. I can't see the first two because there we go. No, I don't have demonstrated bias or prejudice, and I don't have a direct or indirect monetary interest in the outcome of the proceedings.
Okay, I'm next in line, Commissioner McLeod. I don't have a bias. I do live close to it. It will affect me as far as traffic. I don't think it'll directly affect me, and I don't have bias. Commissioner Wallace?
I did have a citizen approach me and ask what the formal name of the proposal was and how to submit comments, but that was it. So I don't believe that biased my opinion.
Okay. Okay. First, I'd like to apologize. My face is paralyzed, and I have never mentioned that to any of you. So it's kind of painful to listen to me read out loud. So I guess we'll propose it of hearing and order of speaking. So the purpose of the hearing is for the Planning Commission to hear that and consider pertinent facts and take action regarding the Venturas Vista preliminary plat application. The order of speaking will begin. Okay, staff preparation.
Commissioner McLeod, may I have the floor?
Yes, please.
Okay, before we go on to the purpose of the hearing and order of speaking, we missed number 3 where it says, does the applicant or anyone in the audience object to your participation or any other planning commissioner members' participation in the proceedings?
My apologies.
But it doesn't seem like we have any. Oh, Brad.
It seemed like there was one gentleman waiting. I can't see it from my screen.
This is the applicant, Brad. We don't have any issues with anybody. We're thankful everyone's forthcoming in a small community. Obviously, people live very close to the project. We understand that. So we don't have any issues with anybody ruling on this.
Are you Beecham? Is that Brad Beecham? Is that you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, this is Bill Ayers. I represent PHP Harriet Johnson. She can't be on the meeting, but she had sent in some comments, and I have them here that I'd like to discuss if we could.
Yes, go ahead.
Commissioner McLeod, may I have the floor?
Yes.
That will be done later on where it says public testimony and comments. Right now, we're just asking if anybody has any objections for the commissioner to participate in the proceeding.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you very much. I'll wait. Call on me.
Okay.
And just briefly, Ms. Ozuna, if I could have the floor.
Yes.
This is Jeff Briggs, attorney with the city. I would just point out that Ms. Funk's forthcoming with regard to that statement that was made to her. meets the criteria of the RCW with respect to ex parte communications. And this is under the Open Public Meetings Act, or RCW 4236060. She did the right thing. She disclosed the substance of the ex parte communication, and that gives the other side a chance to rebut the substance of the statement. So I would say that she's not disqualified because of the ex parte communication.
Mr. Briggs, does that also go for Wallace?
What was the nature of the?
Or was it, or somebody else who was approached?
It was Ms. Funk, I believe. She indicated that one of her neighbors contacted her, and the Open Public Meetings Act says ordinarily you could not participate unless you disclose the ex parte communication, the substance of it, and give the opposing party a chance to rebut the substance of the statement. And she's done that. So
Okay.
she should.
So we're good to go on to the purpose of hearing and order of speaking.
Correct.
Okay. So Commissioner McLeod, back to you.
Okay. Purpose of the hearing and order of speaking. The purpose of the hearing for the Planning Commission is to hear and consider the pertinent facts and to take action relevant to the Ventnor Visit preliminary plat application. The order of speak will be staff preparation. B, then comment from the application. C, then comment from proponents, opponents, and any other wishes to speak. D, when any comment from the applicant is response. E, then response from staff. And F, the question and Planning Commission members. Remember, please mute your audio when you are not speaking. Staff presentation. Before the hearing from the audience, I will go to introduce Millie Ann Van Devender from the city consultant AHBL, who will make a staff presentation.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm going to share my screen. Actually, Rebecca, could you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Give me one moment. Go ahead.
All right. So give me just a moment. Here we go. So as she introduced me, I am Millie Ann Van Devender. Try that. You'll have a pop quiz on that later. And while I'm getting this set up, I work with Nicole at AHBL. We're land use planners, and we provide planning staff for Benton City. And we have lots of education experience to bring to the table so that we can serve you and serve your needs in Benton City. So can you see the slides? It says City of Benton City at the top in a picture. Okay, thank you. I got the yes from Nicole. So this is Ventnor's Vista preliminary plat. And this is the open record public hearing for the application. And this is an application that the City of Benton City received in December. And you received a staff report all about this. So just real quick, because Nicole did a fabulous job earlier explaining all of this, I'm going to go through the procedure just real quick. There's the code section if you ever need to look back on it. The point here is that for this open record public hearing, we are creating an evidentiary record. We're creating the record. It's based on facts. It's based on the codes. And you'll make your decision from that. And the order of operations, as Commissioner McLeod stated, we're going to take turns. So staff, that's me. I'm going to make a presentation and tell you all about the project. And then the Planning Commission can ask questions of staff. The applicant gets to speak for a few minutes, and then the Planning Commission can ask them questions. And then the public has an opportunity to speak. And I believe I heard Commissioner McLeod say that those comments, if we can limit them to 3 minutes, that'd be great. And then any questions from the public that you want to ask of staff or the applicant, you can ask those. Just try to direct them to Commissioner McLeod first, and then she can call on people. And then if there's any rebuttal or response or clarifying statements that need to happen from staff and the applicant, that can happen. And then at that point, you'll close the meeting. The evidentiary portion of the hearing will be closed, and then you will deliberate on the matter and make your decision. So your responsibility, your job tonight is to hold this public hearing. And part of this is so that you can hear public comment. But the other big part of it is so that you can make a decision and make a recommendation to City Council. So your choices for recommendation tonight, you may approve the proposal, you may conditionally approve it, or you may disapprove it. And as Nicole was saying earlier in the training, you're going to want to make sure you have findings to back up any of those decisions. And we have provided some in the staff report, or provided all of them in the staff report. So there are review criteria in the code. So these are the questions that you want to ask yourself to make your decision. You want to base it on the relevant facts. And these are the questions you want to ask yourself. Does the proposal meet the intent, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan, comprehensive water plan, utilities plan, etc.? All of these long-term visions for the city, does the proposal meet the intent and goals and policies of those? And then another question is, does the proposal make provisions for the following? Does it account for public health, safety, general welfare, open spaces, drainage ways, streets, alleys, public ways, all of these things? And then I'm going to go through those things for you to help with your decision. So to start to dive into the project, if you look, you can see the pink outline there is 7 existing plats, and those plats were created with Legion Heights #2 back in the 50s. And just to give you a little orientation, Ida Avenue is right there to the north of the proposal, and Horn Drive is to the west of the proposal, the Yakima River's to the east. And then just want to point out the Kennewick Irrigation District right-of-way is adjacent to the proposal. They're just directly to the east. And within that right-of-way is the existing multi-use pathway trail. So that's the end of the trail right there. Just want to point that out at the beginning, and we'll get a little deeper into that later. So again, pretty big picture. We're going to start looking at the laws that regulate the laws and the goals and policies that regulate the proposal. So the existing land use, which comes directly from your comprehensive plan. So the land use, the designation for this is residential. So the map on the left, my left, shows the pink outline, that's the project, and just in a sea of that sort of beige orange color, that's all residential. And then you can see a little bit of green at the bottom of the picture. That is, I think it's the skate park. The name of it always leaves me. And then there's a little bit of commercial there down at the bottom of that map. The map on the right, the other one is the zoning designation, and this one is designated R3 high density residential, along with 3 lots to the west that front on Horn Drive where there are existing apartments. And this zoning designation has been in existence at least since 2014. And then on this map, I also want to point out that if you can see that there is a red polka dot line along the edge there, very close to the project, that is the Benton city limits. So to the east of that is Benton County. However, you'll see in the map on the left that there's some orange and beige over there because the properties to the east are within the urban growth area. So that's within the area where Benton City could legally expand in the future, potentially. So here we have the preliminary plat as it is now. It's situated on 10.36 acres. The proposal is for 31 lots and 1 tract for a city park, which would eventually be dedicated, and that's down in the lower southeast portion of the site. The proposal includes an extension of Irma Lane. So Irma Lane, the right-of-way for Irma Lane comes in and then continues up to the northeast, even though it's not improved at that point. So the proposal is to extend that where it says North A Court, that would be extended. And then to also extend down into Irma Court to the southeast. The proposal also includes creating a new road that would loop around and create a nice loop from Irma back out to Ida with another little appendage cul-de-sac off of that. So the proposed lot sizes range from around 5,500 square feet to around 13,000 or over 13,000 square feet. And the average lot size is a little over 9,300 square feet. So for the public notice portion, the city published notices. We followed the regulations in the code and published notices in the Tri-City Herald in the legal ad section, posted on the city website and at City Hall. And as has been mentioned, there were letters mailed out to all property owners of record within 300 feet of the proposal property, and the applicant posted a sign on the site. And this actually happened twice. So we had a notice of application that happened on January 3rd, which is just to say, hey, everybody, there's an application in the door. And then after the environmental review was concluded and the threshold decision was made, the SEPA DNS determination of non-significance, that decision was published, and we combined that with the notice of this public hearing. And that went out over 2 weeks ago on January 14th. So from that public notice, the city received 4 public comment letters, and those letters generally, there were lots of details, but they generally addressed the proposed density of the development and concerns with additional traffic. So we've talked about, Nicole mentioned in her training, and we'll say it again, that your decision is based on findings. And so as we wrote the staff report, we went through and found these based the analysis on these findings. So the suggested finding that we're providing for you for number 1, and these findings are directly from the code, from your municipal code. So the first one is that the development is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the requirements and intent of the municipal code. And just to point out a few things, there were, as listed in your staff report, there were many instances where the project furthers the goals and policies and efforts of the comprehensive plan. I'm just going to read 3 of them here. One of the goals of the comprehensive plan of what the citizens of Benton City have decided they want their city to be in 20 years is to encourage development within the UGAs where adequate public facilities exist or can be provided in a cost-efficient manner. We've established this one is in the urban growth area, the UGA. And the proposed new water, sewer, and roads tie into adequate existing systems. And we worked with the city engineer, with Alan Rainey at Spink, who I believe is on the call, and we can ask him some questions later. But we worked with him to make sure that all of the infrastructure is good to go. And another way that this proposal furthers the comprehensive plan is to encourage different residential types within multifamily zones according to allowed densities. So the proposal is for duplexes, and the allowed average unit density according to the comprehensive plan for this area is 8 to 25 units per acre. And the proposed density is around 6 units per acre. And then another point is to encourage residential uses near single-family neighborhoods that support increased densities while maintaining the single-family character of existing neighborhoods. And that can be accomplished with things like duplexes or accessory units. And this is, the proposal is a logical transition between the higher density apartments to the west and single-family residences. So going back to that finding, this is to show that the proposal does meet all of the requirements in the zoning regulations. And just to point out a few higher level with those, it's in the R3 residential high density district, and it's been zoned that since 2014. So there's no zone change proposed tonight. The minimum allowed lot area in that R3 zone is 5,500 square feet for duplex residences. And again, the proposed lot sizes range from just over 5,500 to around 13,000 square feet. Also in the R3 zone, the minimum allowed lot width is 50 feet, and all of these lots have an average width of 50 feet or greater. And after we ran our really thorough analysis of the whether it meets the zoning code, we've concluded that it appears that each lot could be developed with structures meeting all setback requirements, parking requirements, and will not exceed lot coverage standards. However, these items will be reviewed at the construction permit stage. So we don't have proposed buildings out there. So we're not looking at whether they meet the setbacks and whether they are providing enough parking. What we're looking at right now is the preliminary plat, because those items will be reviewed at a later stage. So you have subdivision regulations as well as zoning regulations in your code. So again, we ran a thorough analysis of that. And one of your, I'm just going to point out a few of them. One of the subdivision regulations is that a percentage of the square footage of a subdivision has to be must be dedicated for open space parkland. And in this case, you can see there in the green that the applicant is proposing a dedication of 47,425 square feet. And then there are regulations about cul-de-sacs. And so we asked the applicant to provide justification for the cul-de-sacs, which they did. It doesn't make sense because of topography and because of existing uses around the development. It doesn't make sense for any of the cul-de-sacs to extend farther than where they're going now. So they're all justified and they meet all the requirements for the minimum sizes and locations. And the development includes the dedication of streets, utility, and irrigation easements are also provided. So speaking of utility easements, the applicant is requesting a utility easement vacation for this utility easement that is left over from a previous plat that doesn't make sense for this current configuration of the properties. So they're asking for that to be vacated. And that's not something that you will decide tonight. That's something that needs to occur through a separate process. And the applicant has already circulated the documents to the various utility companies to go ahead and give them the heads up that this is coming down. The applicant is requesting a vacation of an existing right-of-way that was created in 1955. So you'll see here in green, the area, there's just a little tiny sliver. Basically, a long time ago, there was a plat created with this cul-de-sac that they're calling in North A Court here. And that cul-de-sac they're asking to vacate a little piece of it and then extend it. And so the dedication square footage is actually a greater amount. It's just a reconfiguration of what it was before. And that is something that's part of the preliminary plat decision tonight. Okay, suggested finding number 2, the proposal does make adequate provisions for the development to serve the public health, safety, and welfare. And such things may include open space, drainage ways, streets, other transit stops, parks, playgrounds, recreation facilities. So as far as safety and to speak to some of those items in finding number 2, there are geologically hazardous areas on the site. And that means that there are places on the site, there are bumps, there are hills that have the topography is greater than 15% grade in those areas. And you can see in this drawing, the topographic lines or the dashed lines, and then the darker gray areas are areas where the slope is 15% or greater. And so you'll notice that a lot of the sloping is on the eastern portion of the property, but then there are a couple of bumps and hills here and there throughout the property. So we've reviewed whether or not, what kind of impact it will have to do grading on this site and whether erosion and sedimentation and things like that can occur. And that all happened through the SEPA environmental review, but it also happened through a critical areas review, which was included as an attachment to your staff report. So if you want to know more about that, you can go read that portion of it. And what we determined, so we thoroughly reviewed and determined that the potential impacts to the geologically hazardous areas, those impacts are necessary and unavoidable. However, mitigation is required. So the applicant submitted a geotechnical report that was written by a licensed professional geotechnical engineer. And that report contained contains specific suggested mitigation measures that, if followed, appear sufficient to protect the functions and values of the critical area and the public health, safety, and welfare concerns consistent with the goals, purposes, objectives, and requirements of Title 18. So some of those mitigation measures have to do with stabilizing the slopes, controlling dust, and controlling the erosion, and lots of erosion prevention measures, such as tackifiers is a way of, it's basically a blanket, a wet blanket that they throw on the slope during construction to protect it and to make sure that it's not going to blow, the dust isn't going to blow away. And then there are also some other measures that the geotech report suggests when the project gets to the building stage. So another part of this finding, we looked at this dedication of parkland. And if we go back and look at this image, let's go back a couple and look at the park image. It's down here in the southeast portion of the site, right? And then we go and we look at the topography. Well, there's a lot of topography there. That's kind of the steepest part of the site. And so to be used as, you know, it's great to have this gift given to the city. It's a requirement, so it's maybe not a gift, but it's great to have this land dedicated to the city for park purposes. And in fact, the city is not meeting their goals for providing parkland. So the city's level of service, the LOS for parkland, is 10 acres per 1,000 residents. And that's according to your comprehensive plan and your park and recreation plan. And this level is currently not being met, even with some recent additions to the repertoire of parkland, and therefore parkland is needed. So the proposed dedication of 47,425 square feet will help provide that amenity to your citizens. But the area of dedication consists of a large area of steep slopes that are approximately 18% grade. So what we started to think about, what can we do to make this a nice spot and maybe not so much maintenance for the city of Benton City, because you don't want to be a burden, and you don't want it to just sit there and collect garbage or any kind of number of bad things that could happen. So we don't want that. So then we noticed that the existing trail that you have is shown in red here from this website, All Trails. I just went online and Googled the Benton City Multipurpose Trail and came up with great information about your really nice trail. So anyway, it stops about 500 feet south of this project, and it is contained within that Kennewick Irrigation District right-of-way. And there is a lot of desire, apparently, to extend the trail, and there are plans in the works to extend the trail. And if anybody wants to know more about it, and if Alan's still on the call, we can ask him later to give us some more information about it. He has great institutional knowledge about the plans and desires for that trail to be extended. But basically what I got from reading your Parks and Recreation Plan is that people love the trail. They really like it. They really use it. And there are goals and policies in both the comprehensive plan and in the parks plan that talk about providing more trails. There's a desire to provide more trails and more activities like that, opportunities for activities like that. So we came up with some conditions, proposed conditions, and we can get more into conditions later, and they're included in your staff report. For how can we make this piece of land really valuable to Benton City? So one condition is that the dedicated tract A, must be improved with a graded and gravel surface 10-foot wide trail to accommodate a future 6-foot wide asphalt pathway with 2-foot wide gravel shoulders on each side, must provide irrigation service, and then curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the street frontage. And all of that needs to occur prior to final plat approval. In addition, the trail must be graded such that all surfaces and landings meet ADA requirements. And the landings that are provided should need to be twice as wide as the trail so that the city could go in and place benches in the future. And then at the top of the trail near the cul-de-sac, so up here toward the west, there needs to be an area graded as a flat pad that the city could install a picnic table in the future. And then any specific designs and dimensions must be coordinated with the city engineer. So those are some proposed conditions that we came up with as a way to make really good use of that dedicated space. So this drawing is just for conceptual purposes. It's just a sketch. It's the proverbial sketch on the back of a napkin. This is not exactly what's going to happen. Staff suggests in this case that the Planning Commission recommend to council that the developer should have the option to reduce the parkland dedication area by up to 15%, and then they could potentially add an additional lot in exchange for the improvements to the tract prior to final plat recording, because the minimum requirement is that they dedicate land, and there's a certain amount of land that they need to dedicate. There aren't requirements on how pretty the land needs to be or how useful. So we are asking them to make it more useful. And so staff is suggesting that in exchange for making it more useful, maybe there should be this other give and take part of it. Suggested finding number 3, the development as conditioned adequately mitigates impacts that were identified during the environmental reviews. Applicants submitted a SEPA checklist, geotechnical report, and traffic impact study. Staff thoroughly reviewed all of these materials, commented on the SEPA checklist, and issued a determination of non-significance on January 14th. In that DNS, in that determination of non-significance, there were 11 mitigation measures, and those included many provisions to prevent erosion. So erosion prevention, preventing fugitive dust and debris prevention, and the requirement for a cultural resources study. Suggested finding number 4, the development is in the public interest. It meets comprehensive plan goals and policies. It's located near schools and parks, and you want homes. Your comprehensive plan talks about having some livable communities, and you want your homes to be near your schools and your parks, to be walkable, bikeable. And there is a dedication of parkland and dedication of rights of way. Suggested finding number 5, the development as conditioned does not lower the level of service of transportation and or neighborhood park facilities below the minimum standards that you've established in your comprehensive plan. So the regionally adopted LOS level of service for transportation is a D, according to the 2017 comprehensive plan that was amended in 2020. And the applicant provided a trip generation letter from a licensed traffic engineer, the corporation of PBS. And that traffic engineer studied the situation and concluded that the intersection of Horn Drive and Ida Avenue actually carries an LOS of C right now, and would carry that with the development. So although the LOS standard is not being lowered, the existing conditions of the road surface and width for Ida Avenue are not sufficient to carry the increased number of trips that will result from full development of this proposal and build out of the preliminary plat. And the LOS for parkland will not be lowered by the development. Finding number 6, suggested finding, the area, location, and features of land proposed for any dedication are a direct result of the proposal, are reasonably needed to mitigate the effects of the project, and are proportional to the impacts created by the project. There are 31 recommended conditions, and I'm not going to read all of those to you unless you just really, really want me to. And they're encompassing the following topics, just to give you a broad view of them. There's required recreation space for each proposed unit, and that is actually a code provision that's in the zoning code or subdivision code, but we've included that as a condition. Erosion and sedimentation control measures are included as conditions. Dedicated park space, I read through some of those conditions. There's a condition to provide a masonry wall around certain property lines of the property. There's a condition about right-of-way improvements, about water, sewer, and irrigation provisions, about fire hydrants. There's a condition in there about mailboxes and street names, and there are conditions about recording of the final plat. Now keep in mind that conditions can be applied for issues that are not covered by law, so that this is where there's a little bit of wiggle room for what we can ask for. So with that, we'll give you our recommendation, which is to say, as conditioned above, this application does not appear to be detrimental to the general public health, safety, or welfare, and meets the basic intent and criteria associated with Titles 13, 17, and 20 of the Benton City Municipal Code and the Benton City Comprehensive Plan, which are the rules that it's based on. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat application contingent on compliance with the suggested findings of fact and the 31 suggested conditions of approval contained in the staff report. So at this point, we will go through, you'll go through your proceedings where you take turns hearing from different people. And then we recommend that you adopt a motion setting forth the findings and conditions, and then forward a recommendation of conditional approval to the City Council for consideration and final action. Should you desire that there be additional findings or conditions or revisions, we can assist you with that to produce written findings and conditions that you deem necessary. And then there's our contact information. So with that, I will stop sharing and I'll turn it back over to Commissioner McLeod. Thank you.
Michelle, you're on mute.
Now,
There you go.
okay, so is this where we start with the public testimony?
Yes, if you just want to read what it says, public testimony.
Okay. Okay, public testimony and comments. Before we begin, we will, the clerk will indicate if there are any additional written materials that that's been submitted, or anyone wish to submit without speaking.
Commissioner McLeod, may I have the floor?
Yes, you may.
So I don't have any additional written materials. All the written materials were part of Millieanne's presentation. However, we do have Mr. Bill, I see that on his thing, that was here and stated earlier he wanted to comment. That's the only person I know.
Okay, at this time, can we hear from Bill?
No,
with his
next we
comment?
will call upon the
No?
applicant to speak. And then.
Okay, my apologies.
Yeah.
I will now call upon the applicant to speak.
Thank you, staff and commissioners. Appreciate your time this evening. Millieanne did a tremendously good job. We attend a lot of these planning commissions and Millieanne did a very thorough job. So we appreciate that. Oftentimes you guys are not, or other planning commissions are not given such a thorough staff report. So that helps us and it helps you obviously to understand the issues with this project. So we appreciate that. To get started with, we'll just kind of piggyback on a few things she said and go into a couple of the conditions that we're asking for some clarification on some findings.
Excuse me. This is Margaret, and I would like to ask that you give your name and the company.
Brad Beecham, North 44 Homes.
Would you say North what?
North 44 Homes.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, just piggybacking on the staff report, we always start, we're from Tri-Cities. We've had other property in Benton City before, not for development, just single family residence. But we always start with the comp plan and then go into what our specific property is zoned. And so Millieanne did a great job explaining in the comp plan what the goals and intent of Benton City are. And we feel like we are very much trying to achieve those with this project. Our current zoning, like she had said, being high density is between 8 and 25 units per acre. So that would put a maximum density on that property if we were trying to maximize it at 250 units. We're not coming anywhere close to those. I believe ours falls around 60 with this current layout. And so We understand there's some concern with the community. A few of the letters talking about density and how many people are going to be there. But one of the things we want to point out is the density, obviously, with the current zoning could be 3 or 4 times what is currently being proposed. And so there has to be a little bit of give and take. And we understand growth sometimes can feel bad. And there may have been some unpopular growth in the past, but that's not who we are. We've got many, many communities throughout Tri-Cities that we can point you to that we're very proud of. We plan to build everything to the full city standards. Oftentimes we come into a community, especially with an infill project like this, where there's been many, many people built around that for 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years around that infill piece. And the residents at times possibly want to hold us to a different standard than what's required with the code. Our life is very boring. We live within a code book. So when we come into a city, that's where we start, and we then design our product around what their code is. And the code's there to protect us, but also to protect those homeowners. We don't ask for any special favors, and we just ask that we be held to the same code that their property rights are held to.
Could I please have people keep their opinions to themselves while our speakers are speaking? Thank you. Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in there, yeah, one thing that was important to us and very important to city staff when we met was the city park. There's been a couple of redesigns to it. We do have a question about that, I guess, later on how that would work, but trying to give the city what they want. There's been a question down there on the right of way that connects with KID. We don't have any responsibility with the KID right of way, but there is no intention of getting rid of that by KID. So our trailhead that we would go through our park would be part of that trail if it's getting extended that other 500 feet. We think that's a great addition to our neighborhood, and hopefully as things progress out of this neighborhood. One of the things we'll go in real quick on the suggested conditions and kind of some concerns we have for that and some clarification if we can get it. Number 9 on that, it talks about on there providing a block masonry fence around most of the exterior of this property. And what we would do is just, we don't see a finding of fact on this. What municipal code is cited requiring a block fence? We understand completely that people have been there, and I think there's a couple of mentions in some of the letters that they may have a smaller chain link fence and their dogs would be impacted. We understand that. Currently, there's nothing in the code that prevents them from building a masonry fence on their property. We may share with them in the cost of that if that's what they require for that. We would just like that one to be revisited by the council, by the commission. We would like it to be taken off of here requiring a block fence, because we just can't find in the code where it requires us to do that. Obviously, in all of our properties we ever develop, we end up either putting up usually a vinyl fence or a cedar fence around the perimeter of that, but that's at our discretion normally. And unless there's something in code, we would ask that to be stricken from there for a masonry fence on that. That's condition number 9. Condition number 11 is a little confusing for us. It talks about curb, gutter, sidewalk, basically the street standard, which we're fine with along Ida. There's a portion of Ida on ours, about 175 feet of ours before it turns into Irma Lane. Normally on every subdivision that we do, we're in charge of our property frontage, meaning if we have to widen the street, curb, gutter, sidewalk, anything that is required by the city is normally done, and it's on the property we own. In this case, it's a little different property. We understand there's that existing single family residence kind of on the corner there of Ida and Irma. And it seems like in this condition in number 11, it's telling us that we are required to put in the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So improving that homeowner's property, which is a little outside what we normally see. We didn't know, I'm not saying we're against it, but we didn't see in code where it talks about us having to improve an existing single-family home that's not our property frontage. We do not own that property, so that's a little outside of the box. Also extending it from Ida out to Highway 225 is once again not our property. That can create a lot of problems in the development world where we don't own it. And sometimes it might be the right thing to do, but there is another property owner that owns that property that you have to then gain permission from, because just like we said, we want to protect their rights as much as we want to protect our own. So that it creates a lot of headache when we're trying to improve somebody's property, which they may or may not want us to go in there and improve their frontage. So it's something we'd like some clarification on. Going further down there, it talks about on North A Court, and I would say on the east side of Irma Lane, there into the animal shelter. It talks about it here that we're to give them 4 sewer stubs, I believe is what it says, 4 sewer stubs, and then loop the water through their property in an easement that isn't there. Looping the water is obviously something we normally plan to do, but the 4 sewer stubs onto somebody else's property is something we've actually never seen. Maybe 1, but 4 sewer stubs would indicate that they eventually plan to develop that, and then we'd be helping them to develop it, which is a uncommon thing in the development world. We would be open to a conversation with them if they like 4 sewer stubs, but normally that's something that they would either have a latecomers agreement or they would want to pay for up front to have multiple stubs of sewer. And then that just goes into the same thing on Irma Lane, where it looks like we would be improving both lanes of traffic. So curb gutter. I don't think it calls out sidewalk on that side, on the animal shelter side of Irma Lane, but curb and gutter, which once again is their property. It's in the right of way. It's just maybe some more clarification there from Millie on that one. The last one, and Millie, if she gets a chance, or someone on lot 15, we think it's a great alternative to the park, to doing some more improvements and getting that pathway through there. But with that, I didn't know if that would trigger anything if we added an additional lot to this plat, or what the process would be at this point, where normally we can't increase the number of lots, and it seemed like it would increase that. So maybe you can comment on that. And then just real quick, going through some of the concerns, I think we're going to hear from some of the homeowners. We want them to know that we're not just flippant about their comments. We do this all the time, and we do take them seriously. But one of the comments is lot sizes. We don't dictate that. We're going by code. And so once again, we always go back, are we compliant with what the current code is and in the current comp plan? And we are. There was a comment, that kind of starts us out on the wrong foot. There was a comment in there that when densities get increased in neighborhoods, the word was it becomes slum-like. That's just a very narrow focus on a problem that doesn't actually happen. There are neighborhoods that obviously become slum-like, but there are also times that people have very large lots that become uncontrollable too, and garbage gets collected in lawnmowers and cars and different things. And so just to say higher densities create slum-like atmospheres is a little disheartening. We don't think that. We have lots of communities that have much higher density than this. And I think the residents of those neighborhoods would say they're very far from slum-like. So it's a little offensive. Once again, there was a comment about a 4-foot chain link fence, and their dogs would be affected. We would reach out to them. We would once again ask the council not to require us to put a block fence. If that homeowner is interested, we would reach out to them. And if they want to block CMU fence along that portion, we would possibly share some of the costs with them. But in the end, we don't see in the code we're required to put any fencing in, but we, in the end, probably would put either vinyl or cedar slat fencing. Again, with another comment was multifamily housing has a negative impact. I'm not sure what this person's background in development or planning is, but multifamily zonings are super important zoning within a comprehensive plan and a city's growth pattern. It's been in place since 2014, so we're not asking for a zone change to accomplish what the project we're going into, but we hope to deliver we know what we can deliver. It's hard to say that without somebody seeing that. There's a lot of questions that were brought up about what the designs of this will be. I think Millie Ann touched on that. The reason those aren't presented because we don't do a lot of, we aren't required to submit any of that until after our preliminary plat. That's something that happens down the road at the building department side. And so some of those are just not done yet. Elevations and things. We have an idea, but they're just not asked for and not presented. So with that, we'll close out, but we're open to any questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. As chair, I'd like to say a few things about some of the things that you have mentioned, and then I will open it up to the council for them to have questions. Is that okay, Millie? Okay.
Yes, and you can, sorry to interrupt. May I have the
Please
floor?
do.
If there are questions for me too, we can address those now.
Yes, of course. Are there any questions for Millie at this time?
Millie, can we get a copy of your presentation? This is Bill Ayers.
Yes.
Commissioner, we were wondering with Millie if she would be able to just answer that question on lot 15, kind of with the park situation there, would be helpful. Thank you.
So as far as the presentation, yes, I can work with Margaret to make that available, or with the clerk to make that available. It's basically the staff report, and that's online as part of the packet for tonight's meeting. But yeah, we can do that.
And then okay. If it's online, I can get my hands on it. Thank you.
Okay. And Brad or Mr. Beecham, which you were talking about condition number 11?
No, well, I don't, the first one, I don't know if it was actually a condition on your presentation. I know we had received that where you were talking about kind of the alternative with the park. If we were to do more with the park, it seemed like the alternative was to add an additional lot there on lot 15.
Yes, yes. So the density would allow another, within the parameters of the code, you're allowed greater density. So adding a lot would not be a problem with that. It would require us to do a SEPA amendment, so it would add a little bit to the process. But otherwise, it doesn't really change things to add just one lot.
Does that add anything to our public hearing tonight, or with the SEPA amendment? Is that something done on administrative level, or how does that work?
We will need to research that to be exactly sure, just to make sure that you can be vested to that. But we believe this is something we can overcome if it's something that the Planning Commission supports. If they don't, then we won't be doing any further research. But at a bare minimum, we would need to check with the attorneys and as Millie Ann mentioned, issue a SEPA amendment to cover that extra lot.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Millie at this time? We can open it back up when we're done, if you have more questions. Okay, this is Michelle McLeod, Chair, and I want to address to Brad some of the things that I know about the things that he mentioned. And I didn't prepare any of this presentation. My job was only to read it and make recommendations. But what I do know about is the 20-year plan. I was a part of that as a commissioner. And what we, you can check on this, but we talked about defining different neighborhoods with some sort of fencing. I don't believe that there's a stipulation for a brick fence, and I don't know who came up with that. I only read the paperwork that's brought before us. So you're absolutely onto something depending on what kind of fence that you decide. So you can check into that. I don't know that there's any stipulation that is going to force you to put in a brick fence unless it's something structural for the properties. And the curb situation, I was on the city council for several years, and we have talked about curbs and gutters in new developments for the safety of the children and the people at hand that are coming and going from to and from the developments. And it's not so much to improve other people's property, it's actually easement property that homeowners don't actually own normally. And it's for safety and access on and off the new development so that we can be certain that that's the case. And the sewer plugs, the 4 that you talked about, that is probably so that once your development is developed, that you can further adjoin to something rather than have something built and then not be able to adjoin to it and be forced to dig it up and modify it. I imagine that's why. I'm not 100% certain. And the park, it seems like that would be for your benefit, for you to retain an extra lot to develop on for some minor revisions on a park. And so at any rate, your concerns are very valid, and I appreciate you coming and discussing them with us. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for the council for people who have questions about the development with Brad.
Michelle, this is Commissioner Wallace. And I just wanted to make a note, the question about the various types of fencing, that came out of the comprehensive plan. And I apologize, I just read it, but I can't find it in the document to give a page and location. But there were several types of fencing called out in that plan. So I just wanted to let you know where that was coming from.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Ms. Wallace. Do you have any other questions or statements for Brad while it's your turn?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's move on. I see that Levi has a question. Commissioner, you go ahead now.
Thank you very much. I just had a question in regards to the Kennewick Irrigation District right of way that is being, I believe that's the current location of the walking trail, and if I had heard correctly, it the paved surface ends about 500 feet short of the proposed subdivision. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So you, Brad, you'd made some mention of it. Was there, so in, I guess, the response proposal that proposed an additional lot for your guys' development in exchange, I guess, for paving or grading the path down the park lot. Was there any thought in regards to whether there may be the ability to grade or maybe tag on to your efforts to, maybe the city helps pick up some of the cost, or maybe you guys helps with some of the cost to pave the 500 feet from the termination point to the new proposed intersection, I guess, of the new trail?
There hasn't been any conversation on that with us. I believe we heard where the trail ended was from Millie. I believe maybe in the staff presentation, or maybe in a conversation prior to explaining to us what the right of way was, that it was owned by KID, and what that trailhead kind of eventually wants to look like. So it's been talked about for a long time as we develop this. It's never been proposed to us to go down and to extend it from our property currently. I want to make sure I understand too. I believe in the proposal of adding that other lot. There are some recommendations there. I think it was us just providing this flat surfaces for gravel, a certain size of that and a flat area. I don't believe, unless I read it wrong, that we were asphalting within the park. I might be wrong there, but I know where you're saying, Commissioner. It has not been presented to us that way. I think there might be some plans from city or whoever's kind of heading up that trail to get it extended. It seems like there's been some excitement to do that, but not making us do it at this point. No.
Yeah, gotcha. I just wanted to clarify there.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I might say something for a minute here. We have been planning to put trails up through and continue the trails till they're all conjoined. So it's not just your development. There is a preconceived idea to conjoin trails. So I think that's what the offer of the extra lot is about. And if Millie has anything more to add to that.
I would just say that, yes, that's what I've learned, is that there is this idea to extend the trail eventually. There's no plan for that right now at this moment. But the idea was that to make the best use of this dedication to the city, it could be a really good idea to make it so that it could connect to that trail if the trail is created in the future.
Yes, okay, thank you, Millie. And some of that park area is at such a slope that it's not really usable. So it might be a really reasonable plan to do that and can give you the extra lot back. Okay, let's go ahead and go with Commissioner Janet, and let's listen to your questions. Janet.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, this is Commissioner
Yes.
Barr. Hello, am I
Pardon me.
there?
You're there.
Okay, good. All right. As far as the park issue is concerned, I was having a little trouble wrapping my head around one of the proposals with that, where they were going to build a path that was serpentine-like on an 18% grade. And it seems like all you're really doing there is just connecting the path. It sort of defeats the purpose of the whole thing being a park. It's just it's nothing but a road that goes up. And the other problem I see with that too, you have I'll just confess that my background is insurance, and I'm looking at that thinking that's nothing but a massive liability issue because of all the the kind of things you can have with people or kids or older people or something like that going down a path of that size. And it's just kind of scary when I take a look at that. And is that something that, do you really feel that that's a feasible option for that land over?
Well, I think engineering would be a better suited from the Spinks, because they have a better idea of how that would work at that plot of land.
And Commissioner McLeod, if I may.
Please do.
The drawing that you saw in the presentation was just an idea. We haven't gone out and looked at the topography and considered what would be the best design. And that would actually be part of what is being asked of the applicant, is to help figure out that design. And as it is, the topography is such that the piece of property is not suitable for, say, a soccer field or a recreational field, and potentially not suitable for like a traditional playground kind of area either. So we were trying to think of, how could this be not a burden to the city? How could this piece of property be put to use? And it would certainly be, once it was graded and engineered and designed, it would be graded so that the surfaces would be at a they would be ADA compliant for one thing. So they would be wheelchair compliant. So they wouldn't be a very steep grade.
That's,
Thank
that's,
you, Millie.
that's the part that I'm having trouble understanding because, you know, it's not that big of an area, but we can leave that for another day. But along with that, you know, pardon me for, I'm new to the process here. As far as the grading and how do they keep the land level or the land from sliding behind some of the buildings that are proposed? I mean, has there been any engineering done on any of that stuff on some of the areas where they do have grade in back of them?
We're not that far in the process. They're just suggesting there be a park there with a trail and possibly some benches in the future.
No, what I'm talking about is the houses themselves. Because the way I read this, there were some of them where there was going to be a certain amount of grade behind them. And I just wanted to make sure that if that's the case, that the appropriate measures are taken to make sure that there's not any kind of landslide problems later on.
Yes, if I may, I could answer that. That was
Please
part
do.
of the process that we went through for the critical areas review, as well as the SEPA environmental review. When we looked at we read through the geotechnical engineer's report, and the geotechnical engineer made several recommendations about exactly how to build on that land without causing a landslide and without having an impact on erosion. And a lot of those recommendations were included in the SEPA DNS as those mitigation measures. And those are sort of the stopgap or the way to help prevent that erosion, is that we're asking the applicant or telling the applicant they have to meet these mitigation measures. And those are included as conditions as part of this preliminary plat as well. So
Yeah, I
those are,
guess I apologize. I may have just missed it in this, you know, these documents that came. And if that's the case, then it's on me. But that was my question about that. And I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you.
You're welcome. All the information is in your packet, so you can look over that later. Next is Commissioner Sarah Funk. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I had two quick questions. And again, I'm new to the process and really appreciate your patience with me. The first question was related to the utility easement vacation request. And utility easement, just moving it, if I'm using the wrong terminology, we saw the map where they're going to move that easement. Who pays to move it? Is it the developer or is it the taxpayers via the city?
and Commissioner McLeod, if I may,
Please do.
or was somebody else stepping in there? Was that, are you talking about the right of way where they're reconfiguring the cul-de-sac or the utility easement?
Maybe both.
Okay, so as far as paying for the utility easement, the nuts and bolts of it are that they will pay for an application to have that processed and to have it reviewed and processed for the utility easement. But what they're doing is basically, like you said, reconfiguring it. So they have to provide utility easements to provide utilities, you know, electrical and all of it to the future development that's going to be on the site. So they will establish utility easements in other places around the property. So they're basically moving that existing one that goes all the way across several lots. But they're moving it, but the process is called vacating. And then for the right-of-way part of it, there's not, I'm not really sure there's any payment that would need to occur. They will dedicate the piece of property that becomes the road and the right-of-way, and they will dedicate what's shown as cul-de-sac right now. So that will become city property. It's just the shape of it is changing a little bit where they're asking to vacate the right-of-way, the area that's right there. Does that answer?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I had one other question specific to the SEPA application. I appreciate the design work happens later and hasn't been done yet. On page 11, item number 10, it talks about the exterior saying that these will be single story duplexes. If there's a change from single story to more than single story, is that a case where potentially the SEPA would need an amendment? Or
Yes, I believe so, because of the size of the lots, because they're measured by the seam, which is the width of your home towards the first top level. So you have to have so many feet on each side of your home on your lot size, which is determined by lot size and house size. So that's a different thing, but they've already considered all of that.
super, thank you so
And
much.
If I may add something to that,
Yes, please.
we do look at, so the height limit in the R3 zone is 45 feet for buildings in the R3 district. And so when we go through a SEPA review, we think about maximum sizes. So we considered it as a single family, but we were also in the back of our heads thinking about, what if they built these to a greater height? And then that becomes part of the decision for whether or not there will be like solar access or view shed impacts for people around.
Now I'm actually confused and I'm sorry for the
I
point
hope
of
you
clarification.
understand this, like my house is a rambler, it's a one seam
Yep.
house. And the setbacks and the size of the lot determine the height of the home. Like a second story would be a two seam house, you'd need to check that, and the lot would have to fit the size of the home.
Got it. Okay. I think it's
Okay,
clear.
that's a layman's way to explain it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, did Janice have questions? Did you already get a turn? Let's see, Ms. Wallace.
Next
Yes.
is Mr. Briggs.
Yeah, I didn't really have a comment. I just wanted to make note and share some information about, I think the extension of the walking path to that community is a good idea. However, you need to take into consideration there's a pressurized irrigation pipe. That's why it's elevated in that one portion. And that will not be able to be graded down. And the other consideration is that the irrigation district from about where the bike path is shortly beyond that, the city limits ends. So they will not be able to, I guess, co-fund the development of this bike path or walking path through that. It's just some considerations to let people know that before you get too excited about making plans. And that's all I wanted to share.
You're mute, Michelle. Commissioner McLeod, you're still muted. We didn't hear anything you said.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Millyann, would you like to add to anything that Commissioner Wallace has said? Okay,
No, thank you.
all right.
Madam Chair, if I may have the floor really quick, Jeff Briggs, City Attorney.
Yes,
Just
you
a
may.
couple of observations. Thank you. I just wanted to point out here, so my role in all this as the city attorney is to, to put it bluntly, to make sure the city doesn't get sued, right? From either side, from either the homeowners or the developer. And the developer enjoys what's called vested rights. So when the developer submits a permit application, they have the right to develop under the code that is in effect at the time that they submit a complete application. So the developer in this case has done that. And the job of the commission is to determine whether the health, safety, and welfare are met by this development proposal. And that's primarily done by checking to make sure that he meets the code, that the developer meets the code with the proposal. Now, as Ms. Van Devender, did I get that right? Indicated, there is some wiggle room, and that wiggle room is SEPA. So if there are things that are not covered by the code, we can use SEPA, the substantive authority under that, to impose additional mitigation measures, and sometimes those can be off-site. And so that's sort of the playing field here. The case law is very clear on this, that it would be inappropriate to deny a proposal that meets our code under some sort of vague notion that it doesn't meet the public interest. And again, it is the code we're talking about, not the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a guiding document. So we can get things like, masonry fences, that's fine. But if it's not in our code that we require masonry fences, the only way to get a masonry fence would be under our substantive authority under SEPA. We'd have to say, and what I mean by that is we need to identify some impacts, noise, things of that nature, privacy, and then say that this wall is proportionate to those impacts. So anyway, that's all that I had to share at this time. I also had a response to Nicole. She had, Ms. Stickney had asked about what happens if we modify the determination of non-significance. We just recirculate that to the agencies unless the modification is substantial, and then we have to withdraw this determination of non-significance and potentially, do some more analysis, but we're certainly not at that point right now.
Thank you
That's
very
all I have.
much. I'm glad that you clarified that, especially about the fencing and the brick fencing, because there's no way for the land commissioners to know exactly why that was recommended. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Madam Commissioner, may I have the floor real quick, please?
State your name.
It's the clerk.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Just to let you guys know, I was requested for 3 hours for this whole meeting. We are at 8:35, so this will stop at 9 o'clock.
Okay, well, can we conclude this part of the?
No, we haven't heard from everybody. I think we still have Mr. Mark Mortimer and Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mark. I couldn't see your face. I see the hand up though. Please, Mr. Wardener, it's your turn, please.
Hi, this is Mark Mortimer. I live at 1103 Ida. I have grading questions, and I understand it's not this far into the process, and I work in development, and so I understand that. But if the idea is to balance this site, meaning we're not bringing any material in and we're not taking any material out, I'm assuming by his statements, Brad knows what he's doing with this. But the only way I see that is I'm suddenly on an island, like from my property line in at least on the southeast side, which is about 200 feet of fence. I don't see a way around a 2-to-1 slope that is 8 to 10 feet minimum. It's just a big change for us. There was some reference to putting sidewalk and gutter on Ida Avenue or on Irma, the existing portion. I would request that does not happen. That I would really not want that in the front of our property on Ida or Irma. Just makes access more difficult and some other things. I also, in talking to city workers when we first moved in, my sewer line apparently heads out of my house and then to the sort of south and ties in that sewer main out in this property. So that's something that's probably going to need to be checked into, and I don't want to pay for that locate. Is the sewer line in that present easement that is going to be vacated? The sewer main that's in there?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Does Brad know? Or Millie?
Brad or Millie?
I wouldn't want to comment at this time. I would work with him. Obviously, his sewer will be addressed at construction phase.
Yeah.
We're at planning stage here, obviously, so I would hate to tell him something that I'm wrong with. But if he's got a sewer that's currently flowing, it would be tied into a new system.
Okay. Do you have any more comments, sir, about your adjacent, your home?
What was suggested?
Yeah. I understand how early we are in this. It's just hard to really know how opinionated I am about the situation because of how early it is. I understand it's a pre-plat. I know the business well enough to know how this could affect me. I was the one who requested a block wall. And I know the ins and outs of that as well. But you know, I appreciate the time. And Brad, you are welcome to contact me if you want. I'd love to talk through some of your thoughts. I would love to not see 2-story houses right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Millie and if staff sends out any communication after this of people that spoke with names or numbers or anything for us to do that.
It would be a good idea, Mr. Mortimer, to state your name and your address one more time so we can make sure it's in the minutes.
Mark Mortimer, 1103 Ida Avenue.
I'm assuming Mark doesn't want to say his phone number for the record. You want? I don't mind.
If Mr. Mortimer has my email address, you can email me and then and tell me how much information you want me to share with Brad. I can put you in touch.
I do have it already. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. That's fine.
Okay, do it that way, and Bill, if you get that to us, we'll get in contact. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't look like there are any more questions at this time.
I'm interrupting real quick. This is Nicole Stickney. Can you please call on Bill? He said he wanted to speak.
Please call on Bill. He wants to speak.
Okay, yes, sorry, Bill, I didn't see the hand up. Please, it's your turn, sir.
So I'm a longtime Benton City resident, but I don't live there now.
Excuse me, I would like for Bill to give his name and his address.
Bill Ayers. My address is 649 Titan Avenue in West Richland. I know all about building on hills because I live on one. I represent Harriet Johnson at Prevent Homeless Pets, which is not an animal shelter. It's a spay and neuter clinic. And she has a lot of concerns, which I've managed to tamp some of them down, but there's still some there. And yeah, I'm the idiot that called it a slum-like development if we're not careful. I know we can make it careful and make it nice. I think Benton City's doing some great things, a lot of growth in there, but here's some concerns. We're putting duplexes on lots that are fairly small. Yes, I understand you can put 10,000 people in this area, 14 acres or whatever it is, but these lots are pretty odd size. Setbacks are odd. Square footage you have in there includes sidewalks and setbacks and other things that you're not able to build on. And if you got to have parking for 2 cars for each resident, you lose a lot of building area there also. I just want to make sure that's all taken into consideration.
Thank you, Bill.
Also,
go ahead.
Yeah. Also, we talked about minimum square footage, and I had down 4,500 square feet, but actually for a duplex, I think it's 5,500. And I look at lots 31 and 32. I think 32 is the other one. They're very small lots. I've done that calculation 15 dozen times, and I don't come up with the same square footage he has. Maybe the numbers are wrong. I'm not reading them right. I just think we need to look at those again. 45% max lot coverage. I understand that. I was thinking duplexes were going to be 2-story, but I heard tonight they're all going to be single story. No. Yes, all single story. That's pretty good sized buildings when you lay it out square footage wise. Again, I just ask that we pay attention to that so that we don't get caught up in too many buildings and not enough room. Sidewalks. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Sidewalks along the Northeast Irma, not included. Now, we already heard a homeowner said, no, he doesn't want sidewalks. That's okay. I will tell you that Harriet Johnson would not mind sidewalks in front of her place. I agree, it's a safety thing. And if you're going to develop an area, you just can't ignore the other side of the road. If you're going to put in a brand new road, that just makes no sense to me. But then again, I'm not paying for it. The park. I've heard a lot of discussion about a park today. I had some comments on the park. Those comments have changed significantly. They're giving us a park that essentially can't be a playground because it's too steep. That makes no sense to me. Yeah, they're going to grade it, but they're not going to move any dirt off or on the property. That's real tough to do, I think. I just want to make sure if we have a park, it's a park that's usable. Secondly, we got to have parking spaces for that park. If you look at that cul-de-sac there, it's a pretty tight cul-de-sac. You can get 2 cars, maybe 3 in front of that park. If somebody wants to drive there and enjoy the park, we need to look at parking spaces for the park. I think that's pretty important. This is a hard one to talk about because I hate covenants as much as anywhere else, but my builder, when I bought my house, had covenants, builder's covenants, that tells each homeowner when he buys his house what he can and cannot do, including the type of fence, including other structures he might want to put up and those kinds of things. I didn't like it when he did it, but I'm happy it's there because it saves from having a mishmash of stuff after the houses are built. Is there any teeth in it? Not really, because there's no homeowners association associated with it. It's just the builder. And when the builder leaves, I suspect his covenants go with it. But nonetheless, it's there. A fence, we talk about a fence, a block wall fence, or the builder talked about, hey, we'll put a chain link fence in. I'm sorry, that area is very windy. It's very windy in the Tri-Cities. Any other fence other than a concrete or masonry fence is going to come down in a short period of time. It just will. So be aware of that. Now, I know the fence thing might just go away. 3 other questions I had that are not so much comments.
You're running out of time.
I'm sorry. Proposed structures, 2-story, you answered that one. The second one, are these rental units or direct purchase residences? And the third one is landscaping of each resident to be included under construction? And that's it.
Okay, a couple of those questions I would like to address because we're such a new commission. We have new people here. The sidewalk situation, everything here, we're just making a recommendation of, yes, it's a good place to develop. Yes, if it's a good plan. Yes, if they're going through the ordinances. These are the things that have been suggested. The city council will take everything into recommendation and think it over about what the homeowners and what the developer wants and what they agree upon. And you can't have pieces of sidewalks here and there. So it'll have to be a collective decision that's gone through the city. So the development will be by city code, and they cannot do anything in the development of a plan like this without following all of the city codes, and all of the plan will be put out for us to probably look at again in a further date. All the home sizes will be up to city code for the size of the lot and the seam of the height of the home. And it will all be planned out meticulously, and it will all be correct. And as far as the park, oddly, it's an odd shape. The whole piece of property is odd. And so that's probably why they're suggesting the park, since we need it to come through there and adjoin up into Legion Heights. And as far as parking goes, people park down at the skate park and the tennis courts, and they get on there and they walk all over town. There's a lot of different parking areas that people get on that and walk. So I don't know that parking will be an issue, and each development has a certain amount of parking spaces anyway, because that's part of planning a development. And so as far as the people at that house wanting a brick fence, that is something that will have to be worked out with the city. We're just making a recommendation of whether we can see a development there or not. And I'm sure it'll all be up to code and it'll all be safe. So there's some things that will be worked out by other people, where we're just here to listen to it all and make recommendations. Is there anyone else at this time that would like to talk?
I just had one quick question.
State your name again.
Yes, it's Janet Lowry, Commissioner Lowry. And it was Bill mentioned the same thing. When these houses are sold, I don't know if this is relevant. Are they going to be marketed as the duplex? One side is being sold to somebody and the other side is being sold to somebody, or are the properties going to be sold as a duplex?
That's a good question. I didn't read that in the paperwork that I read today. Could Nicole add to that?
Yeah, I will interject here, and this is Nicole speaking, and state that that's not part of the review criteria. So I would just suggest that we move on. I mean, the questions, I appreciate you voicing that, but I don't think it's anything to address. Rebecca did warn us that our Zoom appointment is going to run out at 9 o'clock. Is that right, Rebecca?
Yes, because I was asked to make the whole meeting for 3 hours.
Okay. So I didn't know we had any time limitation. I don't know if this group can deliberate and come up with a recommendation in time. You guys can certainly try if you'd like to. Otherwise, okay. Otherwise, just real quickly, if you cannot do it by the time that we will be out of time, what you'll need to do is have a vote, a second, and then everyone approve to continue the hearing to a time and date certain. That's my recommendation, so that we don't have to renotice. If you can't get that done, we can do a renotice, but typically.
What we can do, Nicole, is if it kicks us out, I can create another one real quick and we can all just jump back in.
Okay, well, can we move along, please? And see if we can make it. The whole idea of the Planning Commission is to look at if this is at all possible. And I think that it is at all possible. I think it's a good use of the land. And so I'd like to go ahead and start the vote if everyone's ready.
Commissioner McLeod, could I ask one thing before we move to that? Would just be.
Yes, sir, quickly.
Yeah, quickly. We would ask that the recommendation, if it is a recommendation to move it forward as an approved, or to move it to city council, that you would revise condition number 9 and condition number 15. Condition number 9, removing the block fence requirement. Condition 15, only recommending 1 sewer stub, not 4.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and recommend that we go ahead and okay this development with the council looking back.
Commissioner McLeod?
Yes.
Before you go any further, you have to close the public testimony portion before you start discussing the matter.
Okay, let's go ahead and close.
Commissioner, this is Bill Ayers. I'm sorry to interrupt. PHP needs 4 stubs because they have 4 different sewer outlets in that location. There's a church there, and there's also the PHP building that has, all kinds of sewer requirements.
I understand that. I wasn't going to say to not do it. I was going to say for the council to look at it and verify the reasons for the brick wall and the 4 sewer stubs. But we are
Thank
running out of time. At this time, I want to close the comments and move on with recommending that we go ahead and okay the papers that have come before us and take some action here and do a vote. But
Commissioner
my-
McLeod, may I interject real quick? Point of order?
Yes, please do.
Okay, I'll assist you with this. So at this, with there be no further testimony, you will close the public testimony portion at 8:53 PM. And you will now, in order for the planning commission to discuss the matter and for planning commission members to make a motion to take action or postpone. If there's any further discussion, is there any further recommendations, comments from staff? If not, then you can make the motion.
Anything else from the commissioners? No? Not hearing anything else, I want to make the motion that we go ahead and we okay the, let's see, staff direction, prepare the findings of direction. Conclude the public hearing for the matter of the time is now, what time? We already did that.
No, but
It's
Commissioner-
8:54.
Commissioner, we have to do the motion first. Which
Well, I
is, we have
Okay.
to make a motion, have it seconded, voted on. And then the staff is directed to prepare the findings and decisions. So you need one of the commissioners to make a motion to either, what was the?
We're running out of time. Can I make the motion that one of the commissioners make a motion to approve the plat application to the city council? Do I have anyone who will make a motion? Oh, and now it's gone.
Nicole Zolwin Sherry.
Commissioner McLeod, I make a motion. I believe we're making a motion to close the public testimony component, right?
Yes,
I make a motion to close the public testimony.
now we need someone to
Sarah Funk, I
second it.
Okay, well, we're actually, just an FYI, we're making a motion for the staff recommendation, which is right here stating, I move to adopt the findings and suggested conditions contained in the staff report and recommended approval of the Vintners Vista preliminary plat application to the city council. That's the motion we need to make before we close the whole public hearing.
And that's if you want some conditions changed, then we can work on that too, very quickly.
Yes, I would like it to be revised so that the city council can go over looking at the block wall and the sewer, the 4 plugs and the sidewalks and curbs.
So that would mean removing condition number,
Number 9 is the block wall and number 15 is the sewer plugs, but we have to have 4. So I would like more confirmation from the city on this.
that
So
was,
the
that
city
was,
council can decide that.
right, and that was a direct recommendation from Alan, the city engineer.
That's correct.
So if you want to pass this motion that's here and just convey that you want them, the city council, to know that you didn't necessarily recommend those conditions, but you think they should review it, we can certainly convey that to the city council and it's on the record.
Yes, I would like it reviewed by the city council.
Okay, so this is your motion here, more or less what I've written out.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
I move to adopt the finding of suggestions, conditions contained in the staff report and recommend approval of the vendors Vista preliminary plat application to the city council with exceptions of the suggestion consideration number 9 regarding the block wall city council with exceptions to of the, oh, let's see, sorry about that. The sidewalk, curb gutters, off-site, and number 15 regarding the sewer connection stubs. Thank you.
Commissioner Kearns, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Sarah, I.
Aye.
Levi. We need everyone to say aye or nay.
Kearns, I.
I think Janet's saying aye, but it's muted.
Nay.
Who said nay?
Lowry.
Okay, we gotta wait for Janice. Janice is,
It's REY, please.
so Janet, I couldn't hear you. Was that yes or a no?
That's nay. No.
Okay,
Sarah did, okay, who do we have? Okay. Motion passes.
the motion passes.
McLeod, you voted yes, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The motion passes with 3 yeas.
Okay, Commissioner McLeod, now this concludes the public hearing for this matter at this time and state that time.
Okay, we now close the public hearing at 9 o'clock.
Seems like we're still going, so. might
Does
as well
seem like
keep on
we're
going.
still going.
Yeah, that was fun.
So we were going to introduce you to some changes to Title 17 that we've worked on. It was just going to be a really quick rundown. I think given the late hour, I'll just say, 3 or 4 things about it. And the first thing I'll say is that you've received the packet has the information, and I believe you've received the copy that shows the existing code, and anything that we've suggested adding to the code is underlined, and anything that we've suggested removing from the code is struck out. And if you can just look at that for Title 17, it was not part of this packet. I think you received it previously.
I did include it in this packet.
Oh, okay. She did include it in this pack. Thank you. So it's in there. So you'll have plenty of time before the next meeting when we bring it to you for a workshop, and we'll go in more depth with it. Just note that we've added some items to the code that weren't previously there, but we've done research by looking at Washington state codes and looking at codes for other cities of the same size in Eastern Washington, and adding to some sections. We haven't done any drastic changes. The majority of what we're proposing to be changed is to update the code so that it can be compliant with state law. And we've done some editing to organize it and make it a little easier for people to use and to read. And then the rest of it, I'll just leave for you to go and read it and explore it and see the differences. And then I want you to, if you haven't already, you can go online and look at the municipal code for Benton City. And you can see sort of where this code section fits in. If you look at what Nicole was talking about earlier, which is section 2.70, which is it's the process for everything. It's how everything's set up in Benton City. So if you if you read Title 17 and the proposed changes, and then you can glance through 2.70 to see where it all fits in, I think it'll make more sense. And then of course, we'll explain it and provide more information the next time we talk about it at your next meeting. Thank you.
Millie, could we suggest at this time that the new commissioners get a commissioner book or the code book so that they have a code book to look at to find the codes? I have a paper one. We recently got code books.
That's a good question for Rebecca. I don't have a paper copy, so I don't have paper copies to distribute. I use the one online.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any paper copies. We just recently updated the code via PDF version. So we don't have, to my knowledge, a printed version of as well that we can make copies and distribute.
All right. We must have just received that before you guys came on.
Excuse me, this is Margaret. May I have the floor?
Yes.
I made the copies of all those books for everybody. I think 5 copies. So if we could borrow one of those copies, so we'll know exactly what needs to be copied, and someone in the office could do that for the 3 new commissioners. That would be my recommendation.
This is Jeannie Wallace, and I have a copy, and I'm more than happy to share.
May I ask how recent that copy is?
I just received it like a week or very recently, so I'm sure it's the one you prepared.
It was distributed just a few months ago, not too long.
Yeah,
So
I
does it include the updates to the business licensing and 2.70 and all that?
I don't know.
I'm asking Margaret.
We have brand new packets that we could get what was revised.
I would recommend, Jeannie, if you could take it to the office and let them look through it and see what's in there, because I can't remember what all I copied. It was a huge book, or 2 books actually.
If it was prior to December, then it's out of order, because we just recently updated the business licensing section in December.
That's correct. And I think I'll bring my book down too. That way they're both updated, and then we'll all be up to snuff.
But the rest of the code should be current, so you could use those at least.
I'll just
we can talk when I bring it in.
Yeah, just so you know, it's not going to be anytime soon, because will take some time to update everybody's and print it out and copy and all that stuff. So that's not something that will be done anytime soon.
Okay.
ASAP.
And that could be something that Maribel does easily.
Commissioner
Sarah.
McCoy, may I have the floor? This is Sarah Funk.
Yes.
Thank you. I was wondering or wanting to confirm, I know there'd been a draft 2022 meeting schedule, and since the next topic is a workshop, are we able to use February 17th to hold that workshop so we can spend time taking a deeper dive on proposed Title 17 amendments, since they've been out since October? I know there's been some back and forth, and now there's new people on the commission, but do we have to wait until March 2nd, or can we use the alternative date of the 3rd Wednesday for workshops?
To my knowledge, there's never been a planning commission workshop meeting. There's only one held a month. Is that correct, Millyanne and Nicole?
I don't know the answer to that. We're not city staff officially. I would recommend waiting till March, just based on our schedule.
Can I ask then for a point of clarification, please? I received an email from Margaret, which I understand went to the other people on Planning Commission. And as a point of clarification, it had a proposed regular meeting schedule. And it also talked about meeting first Wednesday of every month unless there's no business. I'm reading it verbatim, with the alternative date of the third Wednesday for meetings that need to be postponed or rescheduled, or for workshops. So that was the reason I was making the request of confirmation that the workshop for Title 17 amendments would be reviewed February 17th.
Yeah, this is Nicole again. I admit I likely wrote that out, but I can just tell you it's not going to work for us in February. We've had too much absence here in our office. I'm sorry, I can't accommodate it.
Okay.
I'd like to say something. I've been a commissioner for a number of years, and the only training I believe that I remember that we had was a workshop during one of these days when we didn't have business. So if that could be something considered, that'd be helpful, because the new people don't even know what we did tonight. This has been kind of difficult, and I've got to admit that I never meant to be chair, and I don't know how to run the meeting. So it'd be helpful if we did have some help with training.
This is Jeannie Wallace, and I just wanted to add some clarification. That was a request of Don Allen, who has now resigned from the commission. So that was why that workshop was requested.
That's correct. Yes.
Hey, Nicole, you ought to circulate that, what is that document? You shared it with me. It's very helpful though that, I think maybe MRSC produces it, that local resource guide to planning, sort of a crash course. And has all the sort of fundamental principles that we deal with.
Yep.
I forget, I probably have an electronic format too, but yeah, that thing is.
I'll share the
very
link.
useful.
I'll share the link. There's also a good booklet about the public, the appearance of fairness doctrine that goes into way more depth than I provided. So I'll put a collection of links available, and anybody that wants to, take advantage of those online resources, you can certainly do so. There's good stuff out there. I think Sarah, I already sent her some of that, in fact, because she asked me about it. So I'll send that on to Rebecca to share with the group.
In terms of training though, that would probably be something that would be best addressed with council, right? They would be the ones that would, just kind of thinking out loud here, would maybe be able to provide some sort of training and through their budget process for the commission. That's not a bad idea.
This is Sarah Funk. May I ask a follow-up question in terms of scheduling as a point of clarification, please? The draft schedule that was sent through has a meeting for March 2nd and then the next one being April 20th. And then May 4th. May I please request, if it's appropriate, that you all review the schedule? It sounds like actually the times that are proposed are the only times, and the alternative dates or solutions don't necessarily work for ABHL. I appreciate we're in a really difficult time, but if we're able to confirm that there are no times, before that or alternatives through May, that would be helpful, just from us leaving time open on our calendars to plan to be ready for these sessions.
Margaret is who normally calls us on that. We used to do the third Wednesday of every month, and this is brand new, doing the first Wednesday. So that's who I worked with the dates.
It's my understanding that a poll went out and everybody agreed to the first Wednesday of every month to help accommodate AHBL schedule, because they do other cities as well. So that is why we moved it to the first Wednesday of every month, which either way for me, it's 2 nights in a row of meetings. So first or third. But if we are going to be going back and forth each month, first month, third, we need to stick to a schedule. It's either going to be every first or every third.
And then maybe if someone can provide the point of clarification on what's meant by alternative third Wednesdays, as you guys are working to review that, that'd be really helpful. Thank you so much.
I think alternative is if something isn't, if something doesn't come up on the first Wednesday, but then we have something that needs to be done, then we have the third Wednesday available, like an emergency or something that needs to be taken to count to the planning commission after it's gone to council before the next meeting for council, is what my understanding. The alternative is if something gets approved by the council, but it has to go to planning commission before the next council meeting, we have that third Wednesday to where we can schedule something. Am I understanding that correctly, Margaret?
That's my understanding too, and Nicole probably can weigh in on this as well.
We can certainly do this coordination offline and then get feedback from all the planning commission members, set a schedule and so forth. One thing I'll emphasize is that many times these applications have strict statutory deadlines for processing them. For example, a preliminary plat application, we have 90 days after it's deemed complete to get it through the whole process. That includes noticing, SEPA review, taking it to the planning commission and then city council. That's fewer days than a building permit. So we appreciate your flexibility on all of that. Thank you.
And just so the other commissioners know, the city council doesn't have to come back with us on anything. They can make their decision without our recommendations. So we're just trying to help them make the best recommendation and decision. That's all. Anybody else have anything to say?
Just thank you all for being here today and going through this with all of us. So if there's nothing else, Chairman McLeod, you're able to adjourn the meeting if you'd like.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Good job. I know that none of us know what our job is yet, except for Ms. Wallace, who stayed, and she's in the second. So thank you so much for everything. And I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Third.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion carries.